Hey! Welcome back from the 3-week vacation of having to look at our ugly mugs. But we are back, and we're going to kick off kind of like Season 2, I guess?
Technically, in a way, yeah.
Technically, in a way. Let's kick off Season 2. We're going to kick it off with a special today. We're not going to do any news. We're going to save all of the sports news for next week. We talked about this, Chris and I did. We were like, we could do the news. And then I was like, nah, let's just save it because there's a lot already, but there's more coming. And we want to have, that episode. And then we're going to be able to launch into the preseason. So today we're doing a special episode. We are looking back at the 2005 NFL Draft first round, and we are going to redraft this round. Spoilers, there's going to be a lot of changes.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be a lot of question marks, and there's going to be a lot of questionable picks. But, we're going to explain ourselves as best as possible, and, there might be a couple meme picks once in a while.
There probably will be at least a few meme picks, and there'll probably be a few of you that go, what the hell are you two doing?
Oh, I imagine that if anyone actually watches this that knows football is going to look at us like we're a bunch of dummies.
Yep, and I know there's at least one new viewer. Hi, Chris. Reason, not just you, there's a new Chris.
No, I know.
And the reason I know that is because I watched him subscribe when I went and visited him at Starbucks.
Nice.
What? I drive stuff, and, he knows me and knows my wife, so...
No, I just thought it was funny.
Yep. All right, so, that being said, last time we did a mock draft of a first round, I wound up with the first overall pick. This time, Chris has the first overall pick. So, Chris, you and the San Francisco 49ers are on the clock.
Awesome, and I don't need to take any time for this whatsoever. The San Francisco 49ers, with the first overall pick, will pick the QB out of California, Aaron motherfucking Rodgers. I don't need to explain myself whatsoever at this.
Yeah,
everyone knows.
I already had him crossed off my QB list.
Everyone knows Aaron Rodgers is going number one here. The fact that he didn't already was ridiculous, and the fact he slipped as far as he did is also ridiculous. I think everyone knows what Aaron Rodgers can do, and if the 49ers would have picked him here, they would have been at a much better place than they are now. Not that they're in a bad place, but they would be even a better place. They probably would have had a dynasty, let's be honest.
I would agree, because they would have been a continuation of the Montana Young eras.
Exactly, yeah.
So, all right. So, that's the first overall pick. We move on to the second overall pick, which is mine. The Miami Dolphins are on the clock. Now, originally here, the Miami Dolphins picked Ronnie Brown, running back. I'm not going to do that here. Now, there is...
Gee, I wonder why.
Well, there is some questions right now about Ricky Williams, but they also do have Travis Minor and Sammy Morris that are decent enough. Right now, their quarterback room is Gus Frerotte, Cleo Lemon, and Sage Rosenfels. No. So, with the second overall pick, the Miami Dolphins will take the quarterback from Utah, Alex Smith.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, he did take a little while to come into his own, but he eventually did find his stroke and had several good seasons.
Absolutely.
And I think that, with the wide receiver room they have and everything else, I think that Alex, and also they're not great on the line, and Alex, very young Alex, could move in the pocket quite a bit. He did have some legs. So I think having him go second overall to the Dolphins makes a lot of sense. Chris, your turn. Third overall, I believe it's the Browns are on the clock?
It is the Browns. The Browns own the third overall pick in the 2005 NFL Draft. Now, I had options here, and I'm going to detail them for you here in a second. So the Browns here at this point, they had points for, which they were 32nd for 32nd in the league, which means dead last. So basically, they didn't score points. But they were 11th out of 32 in points against, which means their defense was serviceable. It's above half. So I thought, I don't need to necessarily address defense as I was going to have to address offense. Very first thing I look at is I go, okay, well, who do they have throwing the ball? And then you see Trent Dilfer. And he is not a good quarterback. He just isn't. Especially when you look at the fact that at that year we're talking 11 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. Not good. Then you also have 199 for 333 attempts. I mean, it's just he is not the QB for you. And then you look at the quarterback room. Charlie Fry is the other guy they have. He ends up being a rookie out of this 2005 draft, actually.
Did they have anybody injured?
So that's the thing is I don't see, according to what's on the roster at this point, no. As far as I'm seeing, according to the roster, those are the two QBs that they have listed. So I didn't have much faith in what they have as QB room, to be honest. And so I thought about it for a second and went, well, what options do I have now that the obvious two are off the board? There is some others, and I could have obviously not gone QB. I could have gone wide receiver. Their wide receiver room is not great, but not bad. Huh?
Poor? Below average.
I mean, they had Antonio Bryant. I mean, pretty. He's a good wide receiver. It's good. But then they have Dennis Northcutt after that. And you're like, all right. So they got one good wide receiver, one, and that's about it. And then I look at some of the other stuff they have, and I'm like, they don't. Their wide receiver room, I mean, the problem that I'm looking at it is that they ended up getting a lot of wide receivers this draft because looking at their wide receiver room, it just wasn't great. And I can understand why they did that. At the same time, I don't think they needed to get wide receivers at this spot. And what did they end up picking here, actually, just to make sure?
They did pick a wide receiver, Braylon Edwards.
They ended up with Braylon Edwards, which, I mean, he's not a bad wide receiver, but he certainly didn't make a big impact either. No. So, especially not for that pick. So, I thought, you know what, we could go wide receiver here, but instead, I think we need to clear up the QB problem, because that's been a problem for the Browns for a lifetime. We need to at least give them a chance. So then I debated on what QBs that we have left. And I ended up choosing the QB out of USC, originally drafted in the 7th round, Matt Castle.
Not a bad pick.
He isn't a fantastic pick, but he's way better than what they have now.
I wasn't sure if you were going to go with him or if you were going to go with one of the other ones.
Yep. I ended up going with him because I think the one thing I like about Matt Castle is that no matter what team he's gone to, he's a stable QB. He's not a star. He's not going to give you fantastic numbers, but he's going to be a good under-center QB who's not going to make a lot of mistakes.
All right. So, I now have the 4th pick, and the Chicago Bears are on the clock.
Bears.
Now, if anybody remembers anything about the Bears of this time period, the Bears actually have one of the best defenses in football.
Yeah.
There's defense. No question about that to me. I mean, you've got Lance Briggs and Brian Urlacher, and
the defense was mean.
The defense was more, and Hunter Hillenmeyer, and then you had, Charles Tillman and Nathan Vasher in corner, and just their defense was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Now, what did they have elsewhere? Well, quarterback room is currently Jeff Blake and Rex Grossman. I don't hate
You could do worse, but you could do a lot better.
I don't hate Rex. I don't.
Grossman wasn't bad, yeah.
He was serviceable. Now, originally here, they took a running back. I don't understand why, because you have Thomas Jones in the room, who was just about to start going off and having career years. Mm-hmm. So I think you just hang on to him. Now, what do I think they needed? Their wide receiver room was Mushin Muhammad and... Yeah, Mushin Muhammad.
Exactly.
They did have Desmond Clark at tight end, but I mean, realistically, your pass catchers were Desmond Clark and Mushin Muhammad, and that's not going to get it done. So, looking at it, I say that they need a wide receiver, maybe a free safety, maybe a defensive end on the defense, but not really. I would say wide receiver, quarterback, free safety, defensive end is how I would rate them out. And there is a big-bodied, very powerful wide receiver that had several really good years, and I think fits the Chicago play style at this point in time quite well. So, out of UAB, the Chicago Bears select Roddy White.
Roddy White. Damn it. Not gonna lie, he was one of the guys I was looking at for my next pick. I figured he was going to come off pretty quick, but yeah, he was one of the better wide receivers.
He was one of the better wide receivers in this draft. He had several really, really good years that were just there because he's such a big body out there. Now you've got two big body guys with Mushin Muhammad and Roddy, because Mushin was tall. Roddy is just built. So now you've got this tall guy that can go down the field and make jump balls, a la Randy Moss-ish, but not quite as fast, because
quite as fast, yeah.
Nobody was as fast as Randy. And then you've got this big, like, Terrell Owens-style Roddy White guy who can just body the ball into him and then barrel through people. And you've got, and then you've got Desmond Clark to do that as well. So that plus Thomas Jones, now you've got another security blanket for Rex Grossman, and I think that makes him look better. Now you don't need another super QB because the QB you have is serviceable.
Exactly. So,
I
agree. That's a good pick.
So now we move on to pick number 5. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You are on the clock.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers are on the clock. And so then I pull up. Let's see what we got here. So I look at it. I go, okay, points for 20th out of 32. Not great. Offense having issues. Points against 8th out of 32. Not touching the defense. They obviously have a good defense. I don't need to mess with it. So obviously I'm looking at right away again QB. What do we have? Chris Sims, 1 year. He was a rookie last year. Give him a chance. You know, they drafted him last year. I'm not going to all of a sudden redraft a QB here. This is his second year in the league.
If I remember right, there was a lot of hype, and he had actually been good, and then he got injured. I think his liver was lacerated or something.
Yeah, but I don't think it was this year. I think it was the next year.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of derailed him.
Yep. So I was like, okay, that's not a bad QB based on what we know. That's fine, and maybe things turn out differently depending on how things go, but we can't assume that. Either way, I don't need to draft a QB now. Either way. So then I'm looking, okay, what do they have for running back? Well, they ended up drafting a rookie this year. So you're right away going, they obviously must have running back issues. Let's see what they have in the room already. And then you're looking at Ernest Graham. Then you're looking at, let's see who else is on here. Michael Pittman. And then the fact that they drafted one later, and they actually drafted one, I think, at this spot, in fact. I think they ended up drafting Cadillac Williams.
They did.
Yes, they did. They drafted Cadillac Williams. So right away, you're like, okay, I can see them needing a running back, so that's kind of in my mind. Who do they have for wide receivers? Michael Clayton? Didn't have a great year last year, but okay. Joey Galloway? Getting older at this point. I mean, he's 34, but he was very good still. So we could service with more wide receivers. Let's see what else was on their roster, right? They had, those were obviously the top two. You had Ike Hillard, Mark Jones, right? Like, and then they ended up getting Edel Shepard as well. Like, their wide receiving room is okay. So the one thing I looked at is, okay, I think running back makes the most sense here. I started looking at what they ended up drafting. They drafted somebody who they were already using as a dual threat, right? Because he was taking on snaps, but he was also out of the backfield. He actually caught a lot of receptions as well. So I thought, if they want a dual threat, I'll give them the best dual threat that's in this draft that I can think of. And so I picked the guy out of Miami, Frank Gore.
He was at the top of my running back list, too.
Like, he just had... At this spot makes the most sense. You want a dual threat running back? There you go. Here's Frank Gore. Like,
he also had the longest career of everybody.
Exactly. So I think that makes the most sense for Tampa Bay in this spot.
I'm not going to be mad about that. I could be, but I'm not going to be. I like it. I like it. So, next up, I have the 6th overall pick and the Tennessee Titans.
The Titans
are on the clock. Now, here originally, they did pick Adam Pac-Man Jones.
Not a bad pick, by the way.
No, that was actually a very good pick, but was it the right pick? That's where you get to be the question. So you begin to look around at them, and you notice that, they have a Henry on their roster at running back. Travis Henry. They've also got Chris Brown. Wasn't horrible. But, so right now, their starting quarterback is Steve Air McNair. They are backing him up with Matt Mauk and Billy Volek. Now, who did they have for wide receivers in the room already? They had 2 wide receivers in the room. Oof. Drew Bennett and Bobby Wade. That was it.
It sounds like a team that actually has a lot of needs, actually.
It did a little bit. They've already got a decent offensive line, and at this point they've got Albert Hainsworth as a defensive tackle, Vanden Bosch as a defensive end. They actually did also have Travis LeBoy and Antoine Odom as defensive ends. You had Keith Bullock as an outside linebacker, Peter Sermon as an outside linebacker. They had some defensive backs, but nothing great, which is why they grabbed one, and I can't blame them for it.
Makes sense.
But there's a lot of other things that they could use as well. So I have them as needing a wide receiver, a running back, an offensive tackle, and a quarterback. They would take an offensive tackle in later rounds. So my question to me was, what do I really want to do? Because there are a number of options that I can get here. And then it turned into, you know what? In 05, let's help Steve.
Okay.
So, what I would wind up doing is drafting someone else entirely. Don't get it wrong, Pac-Man's a great pick, but I want to get his school.
Fair enough.
Alrighty. Because I don't remember where he went to school at.
Fair enough. You're good.
Fair enough. Alrighty. So, from northern Colorado, the Titans are going to draft the wide receiver, Vincent Jackson.
Vincent Jackson, yeah. I had him on my list. I had him going a few picks lower based upon my list, but yep, that makes sense. Now I have to remove him from. I have to remove him from every single spot I thought he might be at. Because I thought you were gonna overlook him. To be honest, I was hoping you would. I had him on a lot of lists lower down.
No, he went. I think he went originally to the Chargers, and then he wound up being traded to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he put up several really good seasons.
He did.
And he was tall, too.
Yes.
So he was tall, he could get down the field well.
He was good for the jump
balls,
balls,
great for jump balls. So you get a guy like Air McNair that can throw that ball out there. Now you've got a guy like Jackson that can just go get it.
Go get it, exactly.
That's potent.
I like it. It's a good pick.
All right. So, next on our list, we move to pick number 7, Minnesota Vikings.
Vikings.
Originally on the clock. Originally taking wide receiver Troy Williamson. That did not work out.
No, it did not work out. Not a terrible pick, but certainly not a good first-round pick.
No, I would have picked him way later.
Exactly. So then my first thing, just to point out to everyone, like I'm doing the same thing I did every time, points for and points against, they were 19th on post. They were just 19th points for, 19th points against. Shit, this doesn't tell me what they need. All right, let's go down and look at their starters. Well, we know that at this point Dante Culpepper does end up starting, but does get injured, and they end up starting Brad Johnson in 2005, so I'm thinking, okay, that's not the best backup you want, and we know based on history that Dante Culpepper does move on from the Vikings at this point. Whether that's due to the fact that they were concerned with the injury or because they just didn't want to re-sign him for whatever money he was asking for, not my problem. But I do know that he's going to be gone, and we're gonna be stuck with Brad Johnson. So that's concerning. So I have question marks at quarterback, especially with Brad Johnson being 37. So he's getting old. But then I'm looking running back. Moeldy Moore. I mean, he wasn't a bad running back, right? So what did they have as their backups? Michael Bennett. All right, that's not terrible. Then they had Adam. I can't say this. Adam. Nope. This guy's name is impossible to say. Ekamando. Ekamando is maybe his
Hold
last
on.
name.
I might
You know what I'm
actually
talking
remember.
I can't say his last
I
name.
might actually remember the person. Oh. Adamochinobi Ekamendu.
Yeah, it's such a weird name to say, but not a bad running back, right? Like they have a lot of running backs on their room. That's all I'm gonna say is they have a lot of running backs in their room. So do they really need another running back? No, they don't. Do they have a star running back? And that's depending on depends on what you define as a star. But I don't think they need a running back. So I'm looking at QB potentially. Running back, no. What do they have for wide receivers? Nate Burleson and Travis Taylor. I mean, not bad wide receivers.
Corin Robinson as well.
Yep. They have a couple others as well. Keenan Howery. Yeah. So I mean, they had Corin Robinson, yeah. Marcus Robinson. I mean, they had wide receivers. You know, now whether you would argue if they're good, or like star caliber, again, they're not bad. You can do a lot with even just good, talented wide receivers, right? They don't have to be stars. So then I'm looking at tight ends. They were okay. I mean, Jim Kleinensoller and Jermaine Wiggins. Kleinsasser, sorry, and Jermaine Wiggins. Then I'm looking at their defense going, okay, what do we got for defense? Well, obviously you have Pat Williams and Kevin Williams, right?
The Williams wall.
The Williams wall. Darren Scott. Okay. Keith Newman, Sam Cowart, E.J. Henderson, Antoine Winfield, sorry. Brian Williams, Darren Sharper. Like, they got... For what this team has for on paper, you're looking at it confused why they're stuck at 19 out of 19 out of 13. Like, they have good pieces, so then I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to do? I don't know exactly. So I'm thinking there's only two players I think I want to put in this spot. One of them you could tell me is maybe I don't need to have here, but would be fun to still put in here. The question mark is so right now I'm going in my head, which way do I want to go? Because I have two players in my mind right now that I'm looking at. And one's a QB, and one's a defensive player. And so I'm deciding, do I go QB or do I go defense? Because they need both, realistically. Like, the defense isn't terrible, but they could definitely do with better. It's such a tough call, too. Because knowing what we have here, it's just... Do we service Brad... Like, my real question mark I'm going with is, do I think Brad Johnson can be serviced for another year and then hope that something changes in the future where they don't have that run of string of terrible QBs? And that's where I'm debating on, do I select the QB here or do I select defense? It's a really tough call. It really is. Like, before we started this recording, I was convinced I was going to go a defensive player, but now I'm kind of flip-flopping myself here. Oh, what do I... You know, I think I'm just going to go for the defensive player because it's just going to be fun.
Go ahead.
It'll be fun. So, Minnesota is going to select, out of Troy, DeMarcus Ware. I'm going DeMarcus Ware here. Fantastic linebacker. I don't think anyone's going to say that isn't just a straight up good for any of the linebackers that are already there. And knowing what kind of seasons he's going to have, like, you've solidified your defense now. Now you can work on your offense later.
Absolutely. I'm not even mad at you for that. That's a fantastic grab. All right. So we move on to pick number 8. The Arizona Cardinals are on the clock. They originally picked safety Antrell Roll. Not a bad pick at all.
Actually, a really good pick, to be honest with you.
Very good
Is it
pick.
what they need, though?
Well, let's take a look at what they need. So when I was looking at this, I started looking at, who they have, what's their room look like, and man, I don't know what to make out of this roster. I'm going to be straight honest. I looked at it and I went, what? But, so Kurt Warner did start, but got injured.
Yes.
And wound up on IR. And I believe they turned to Josh McCown.
Which I think he did okay.
He did okay. So I'm not mad about that. We all know what Kurt Warner is going to wind up doing in Arizona eventually, so I can't be pissy about it. Now, what do they have in their running back room? Damian Anderson, Obafemi Ayabandaho, James Jackson, Marcel Shipp. None of those ring a bell. So, all right, running back is something they could probably use. Then we looked at wide receivers. Oh, I can stop after 2. Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah, you don't even need to continue with that. That's
done.
You got a good wide receiver crew there.
What do they have for tight ends? Eric Edwards. Maybe. But you don't really need another pass catcher. Not really.
Fair.
Their offensive line wasn't horrible. They did lose their center. They lost a huge amount of things. They had a lot of injuries this season. And had they all stuck around, they actually did have some decent pieces on offensive line. But, injuries happen.
That's fair.
Defensive lineman, Darnell Dockett, Chike Okafor. You had some pieces there. You also had some pieces get injured. So, maybe not. You had Carlos Donsby and Orlando Huff at linebacker, along with... Yeah, and then you had some guys get injured from linebacker, Gerald Hayes. All right? Then you had... So what did you have for defensive backs? Dyshon Carter, Robert Griffith, David Macklin, Adrian Wilson. Now, what I will say is they initially drafted Antrell Roll as a cornerback and would move him to safety, where he would rack up all the things. So
he was very good at picking the ball. That's what he was good at.
He was fairly good at picking off balls, yes. So I looked at it and I went, okay, well, I've got 2 options here. I can either choose a running back, or I can pick up and secure their secondary. So just looking at all of this and looking at it and wondering, what can I do with all of this? I decided that I was going to do what they originally did. I'm not taking Antrell Roll, because while he was amazing, I'm going to take the other cornerback that is currently available, because he didn't get taken earlier. So, out of West Virginia, they will take, let me see here, the Arizona Cardinals will take Adam Pac-Man Jones.
That's fair. Yeah, the minute you said West Virginia, I was like, oh, there's Adam Jones. He's going with Pac-Man.
Yep.
It's not a bad pick. I like Antrell Roll better, but I get why you would pick Adam Jones here instead for the cornerback role. So I get it.
I'm picking pure corner, not more of a rover.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other guys that I could have gone with. I even looked at potentially going linebacker or defensive end, and I didn't. And I thought about pulling the trigger on a running back, and I was like,
there's a couple still available that are
there are a few that I could have pulled the trigger on, and I didn't.
No, it's fair. I get it. I mean, they definitely needed secondary help, so it's fair.
Oh, they definitely did. And I think, Pac-Man not playing in Tennessee and playing in Arizona at what could be considered a potentially bigger market, or or definitely he's going to be one of the men on that defense.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that makes a huge difference in his career.
it makes sense. Yeah,
All right.
it makes sense.
So, next on our list, number 9, the Washington Redskins. You are
Washington
on
Redskins.
the clock. Now, the Redskins would take Carlos Rogers,
Carlos Rogers.
a cornerback. That is not a bad pick.
It's not a bad pick. It
He
really
turned out
isn't.
to be a really good player. But is
He
it
was
what
a
they
good pick.
really should have picked?
Well, let's look at their team, shall we?
Let's do it.
So, points for 13th out of 32. Okay, they're putting up offensive numbers. Not amazing, but putting up offensive numbers. Points against 9th of 32. Did you really need to pick up a corner then? Well, let's take a look at what they had. So right away, their QB, Mike Brunell.
Mark.
I mean, not bad, not fantastic.
Believe it's Mark Brunell.
I said Mark.
You said Mike.
I'm pretty sure I said Mark, but I meant to say Mark if I didn't say Mark. Because I'm literally looking at his name right now.
Yeah.
So if I said something else, I meant to say Mark. Mark Brunell. It's not bad. I mean, he put up a lot of touchdowns. He did have a fair amount of interceptions, though. So you could do worse. I mean, who did they have backing him up right now? Let's see here. They had Patrick Ramsey, which not a name I'm familiar with, so I don't know if he was any good.
Mediocre.
So their quarterback room is questionable, especially when you look at Mark Brunell being 35 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So you could argue that maybe this is a time for them to pick up maybe a quarterback. That's fair. But let's look at their running back. Oh, Clinton Portis. He was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
He was actually pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I need to touch that. Who else do we even have here? We had Ladle Betts as a running back. They had, ooh, was that really it? No, wow. Those were the only two they actually had listed. Interesting. So you could if you wanted to, but I don't think they need one, to be honest with you. Then you look at wide receivers. Santana Moss. Well, that's already a pretty strong go. Then David Patton. Okay. So they have one good wide receiver. Who else is on their team? Let's see. Antonio Brown. Yeah, I don't think they need wide receivers.
I believe this is a different Antonio Brown.
It is a different one. He was still decent, though.
Yeah.
Actually, no. I think this is a different one than I thought he was. Hold on. Let me pull it up. Okay. He was a serviceable wide receiver.
Santana
Jimmy Ferris.
Moss is who you're looking for.
No, I already said him out. Yeah.
You don't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The one good wide receiver they had was Santana Moss, and I went, okay, who else did they have? David Patton, Antonio Brown, okay. Jimmy Ferris, Taylor Jacobs, that was actually not bad. Rich Parson, you see what I'm saying? They had wide receivers, but they only had really the big top dog, and then it kind of had a pretty drastic drop after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm looking at, okay, well, tight ends, they had Chris Cooley and Robert Royal. Chris Cooley was actually a pretty decent tight end, so I don't think you really need one. And then looking at their left tackles and looking at the offensive line, it was fine. I mean, you had Chris Samuels, who ended up being a Pro Bowler, right? So I don't think they really needed to do much. Defensively, I thought maybe I could go for a defensive player here, but they had Sean Taylor as a free safety. They had Marcus Washington. They had Philip Daniels. They had Cornelius Griffin. They had a pretty decent defensive team, actually. So I was debating on if I wanted to go that way or not. And then I fell on an interesting choice after a while of looking. And I was thinking the obvious pick would be going a wide receiver because they really need a good second wide receiver over what they have. And I could definitely do that. I could still do that. However, there was a particular player that stood out to me after looking at what they had on their offensive line. And I debated on, do I go offensive lineman here? Because there's one specifically that is calling out to me that would be far better than what they have now, and it would also help protect their older QB since they're not going QB. So I think I'm going to pull the trigger on that. I'm going to choose kid out of Oregon, Richie Incognito, as a guard.
He also can play. He can play basically every.
He also
position
played center.
He plays center.
Yeah.
He could also play tackle. He played almost every position on the line.
He did, and frankly, it just makes sense here. Like, they have a decent offensive line, but this is going to be a vast improvement over any spot they put him in.
Yeah. I'm not even mad. I think that's a fantastic grab. There are a couple of other guys that I thought maybe you would go with over this. But
there was a couple I was looking at, but I really liked Richie when I looked at his stats and I saw what he could do. I was just like, you can fit him anywhere on that line, and he's going to be better.
Yeah, I'm not even.
And if they have an older QB, it just makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's not even like me being mad about that. That makes perfect sense. He was on my list as well. I had him as a center, but I know he can play guard. I also know that you could probably shift him outside to tackle. He's just a dude. He's a dude that just plays the line. He's good.
He's just very.
He had some issues.
He did,
but this is.
But he was very good.
This is Dan Snyder's Washington. Who cares?
Exactly. They're not going to complain about that.
No.
If anything, they might be like, "Yeah, go, Richie, go."
Alrighty, so now I am on the clock at number 10 with the Detroit Lions. Oh boy! So I should say
who did they end up picking?
Mike Williams, wide receiver, USC.
How'd that turn out?
Not good at all. Although he had been a very good receiver in college.
Up until that, yep.
And so I can't be mad that they grabbed him, but there were a lot of other issues around him at that point in time, and they probably should not have grabbed him.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and I looked at Detroit, and I said, well, let's take a look at their rooms. What do they need? What do they have? What could they actually do here? I looked at this list, and I went, what do they have for quarterbacks? And then I saw they have Jeff Garcia and Joey Harrington. Okay,
that's rough.
That's definitely on the list. Then I looked and said, well, what do they have for running backs? Kevin Jones. Okay, that's not horrible. He was serviceable. Not blow your doors off, but okay. So why did they grab a wide receiver? Who did they already have? Charles Rogers and Roy Williams. Charles Rogers never panned out. No. But Roy Williams was really good for a couple of years. They also had Eddie Drummond.
To be fair, it's also hard to be really good when your QBs aren't very good at throwing the ball.
No, they really were not. So then I looked around a little more, and I said, what else am I looking at here? What else could the Detroit use? And, yeah, they could probably use an offensive tackle as well. Protect the quarterbacks that you have so that you don't have to keep getting new ones all the time.
True.
Because did they have anybody that was a quarterback that was currently... Nope. That was it for their quarterback room. They also had Kevin Johnson for wide receiver, who, if I remember right, was actually halfway decent.
Halfway decent, if I remember right, yeah.
They had... Then I kept looking a little further, and I thought to myself, what else could they use? And I looked at their linebackers, and I went, oh, they could definitely use an outside linebacker. Because you've got Boss Bailey, who would get injured, and who? I even think they could probably use a middle linebacker, too. But they really didn't have a whole lot that was good in the linebacking core. And then you started looking at their defensive backs, and you went, oh, Dre Bly. Oh, Andre Goodman. Okay. Oh, Keith Smith. Oh, okay. Well, they did have some things then that were safeties and other things. They also had Fernando Bryant on IR. And you go, oh, well, and Terrence Holt, IR. But you go, okay, well, their secondary wasn't horrible then. So now what do you do? Well, you're either looking at tackle or quarterback. And I cannot... There are still quarterbacks on my list. But I don't justify taking any of them here.
There's one I might, but I get what you're saying.
There is one that I might, but I still don't justify taking him here.
Right.
We're both thinking of the same person because he played
Probably.
for Harvard. He played for Harvard.
I think so. I have to check to make sure, but I'm
He
pretty
definitely
sure.
played for Harvard.
I have a... I don't remember colleges.
Does his last name rhyme with magic?
Yeah, it does. I was scrolling down to look at it. That's why I was scrolling down, because I was like, I'm pretty sure it's the same person.
It's Harvard.
Yeah.
So I looked at it and I said, well, I could go linebacker or I could go offensive tackle. And you know what? Mm-hmm. There turns out to be currently sitting on the board a fairly good offensive tackle right now who I think you draft him and you wait and you get a quarterback either next year or the year after. Because right now you're not making a run anywhere and you know it. But you've got to do kind of what like Tennessee did this last draft. You got to start somewhere and you got to build your base up. So let's put a good building block in place. Let's grab the guy we need to. So I am going to draft. Let me see if he's even a first rounder this year. I think he was, actually. I just have to figure out. No, he was a second rounder originally. I'm going to take the tackle from Eastern Washington, Michael Ruse.
Ah, okay. I had him further down my board as somebody that I wanted to take. All right, fair enough. I'll remove him.
I think he's probably the best tackle currently on the board.
No, I just meant as in like looking at what team I was gonna put him on. It was further down the board.
I thought maybe if one of the quarterbacks slipped far enough down, like if you hadn't grabbed Castle, I would have definitely grabbed Castle.
Oh yeah.
But I was like, you know, if the tackle was still sitting there, and I was like, okay, well, we need to definitely shore up the offensive line. Jeff Garcia isn't a horrible quarterback, but he certainly isn't.
He's not gonna blow the doors off.
He's not gonna blow the doors off, but you've got enough other stuff. If you can cement your offensive line and give him a little more time and set your edges so that your running back can start getting outside, because that was the thing with Johnson, is that he was fast, but you needed to give him room to run. So that's where that went. Personally, I think that's probably the best way to start that rebuilding process in Detroit, and maybe you end up with something really good.
Yeah, all eventually get Stafford. Maybe he actually has an O-line.
So we are to pick number 11, Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys. You were on the clock. You originally selected DeMarcus Ware, who is no longer
not on the board,
no longer available. So,
if he would have been, I would have just left the pick because it was such a good pick.
It was an amazing pick. So, what do you do instead?
So I have to then look at their team and go, okay, what do they still have, or what pieces do they need? Well, funnily enough, they have points for 15th of 32, so offense still has some issues. Points against 12 out of 32. Again, above half. Both are above half. So I'm looking at it going, I could really go either offense or defense. So I start away right away. I go QB, Drew Bledsoe. My bird is being really loud. I go QB, Drew Bledsoe. Now, normally, at first I was like, that sounds like a problem. Until you scroll down and realize Tony Romo is already on the roster, and next year is where he actually makes his appearance, his debut. So you don't need a QB. You have Tony Romo. Don't need to worry about that at all. And then I look at running backs, and I go, okay, you have Julius Jones. He was okay. He did pretty good. And then I look at other running backs that they ended up having on their roster at this time. And really, I mean, Julius Jones is the big one, and then you have Lusaka Polite. I don't know if that's how you say his name. Which I don't... It's not a name I'm familiar with, so I don't know how good he was. And then Anthony Thomas and Tyson Thompson. Jesus. Again, not names that I'm super familiar with, and I think Thompson was actually a rookie that ended up getting drafted this year, so it doesn't even matter. So he wasn't even on the team before. So, running backs are a question mark. You could go with a running back if you wanted to. Not necessarily need to. Tight ends, you look at Dan Campbell and Jason Witten. Actually, Jason Witten was good. Campbell didn't really do much, but he wasn't bad either. Like, I think he was more of a blocking tight end, if I remember right. So, not really a big deal. Then you look at what they had for their offensive line, and you had Torrin Tucker, Larry Allen, who ended up being a Pro Bowler, Al Johnson. Like, not bad offensive line-wise. Defensive, you're looking at it going, okay, well, what did they have here? Well, they had Roy Williams as a strong safety, which is already a pretty good start. And then you end up with Leroy Glover, I believe, as a nose tackle. Because they ended up with one of those weird systems, yeah. Which was really good, by the way. He was a Pro Bowler as well. Keith Davis, free safety. You had a cornerbacks, Terrence Newman, Anthony Henry. Like, their defense was actually pretty decent. So this was one of those weirdest parts where even though their points for and points against suggest they needed more than they do, in reality, because they had Tony Romo already waiting there wasn't a huge amount of needs necessarily, as much as it's shoring up like who's going to play secondary, who's maybe going to be the next star, right? And that's kind of the way I was looking at it. What did I want to do? And knowing what they ended up drafting here, I could have gone defensively like they did, but I don't think I'm going to, actually. I think I actually probably will do something interesting. Let me see here. Do I want to do that, though? The question mark is which one I'm choosing. There's two of them that I'm looking at, and I don't know which one I want to go with. I think I will do this. It's going to be a slightly... Like, this is where picks are going to start getting a little weird, and people are going to question my choices here. That's fine. I don't really care. But I'm actually going to pick a very different pick here. I'm going to pick a running back out of Minnesota who was selected by Dallas, but in a later round, Marion Barber III. And frankly, it makes sense. He's
it
better
does.
than what...
I'm mad because I was hoping he would slip down all the way to when I picked for Minnesota next, so I could take the hometown kid.
Fair enough. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it. He was way better than the position where he got drafted. I think he got drafted in the 4th round.
Something like that, yeah.
4th round by Dallas, in fact. And, you know, they need to shore up that running back room. They obviously knew that they needed better running backs. I might as well give them what they were already going to get anyways.
Marion the Barbarian.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Can't even be... I'm mad because I wanted him later, but I'm not mad because it makes sense for the pick.
It's a good pick, yeah.
So, 12th overall pick, the San Diego Chargers are on the clock. Now, originally they picked Pro Bowler and outside linebacker Sean Merriman.
Good pick.
Not a bad pick at all. I mean, he rather quickly and rapidly declined and had a very weird relationship with Tia Tequila?
Yeah.
Tilla Tequila? Whatever her name was.
Yeah.
But that was very interesting. So, I decided to look in and see what do they actually need right now. Because, you know, weird, right? Mm-hmm. So, what do they have in their quarterback's room? Oh, you don't need anything. They've already got Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers. Yeah. Nope, you're good. Have a nice day. Mm-hmm. So what do you have running back-wise? LaDainian Tomlinson. Okay, moving on.
No, you're good there. Yeah.
So what about wide receivers? Reach Caldwell, Malcolm Floyd, Keenan McCardell. Okay, not
the best wide receiver,
but not horrible. Who do you have at tight end? Antonio Gates. Okay, moving on.
Yep, move on.
Offensive linemen, Chris Dealman, Mike Goff, Nick Hardwick. Nope, moving on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Who do you have?
This is a team that, you know, stacked.
Yeah. Who do you have at defense? Well, that's where you start looking at things. Jamal Williams is your nose tackle. You've got Igor Olshansky as a defensive end. Meh, okay, whatever. Who did you actually have on outside linebackers? Well... at this time, your insides were Stephen Cooper and Donnie Edwards and Randall Godfrey. And outside, you had Steve Foley and Sean Phillips. Okay. Yeah, okay. And then defensive backs, you had Sammy Davis. You had Jamar Fletcher, Drayton Florence, Quentin Jammer, and you kind of were hurting for safeties. So, I think that I am going to fix that issue with somebody who is still on the board and whom I think San Diego would have loved to get their hands on if he had been available originally. And out of Miami, Florida, the University of Miami, they will take the cornerback safety, Antrell Roll.
Ah, okay. I was hoping he'd be available a little later, but that's okay.
Hey, you do it to me, I do it to you.
Yep. I knew that he wasn't going to be, but I was hoping he would be.
I didn't think he'd still be here when I picked at 12.
I had him a couple picks later on my list of high picks where I wanted him. But
yeah. But I mean, look, Sean Merriman was great for that period of time, but Roll had a ridiculous career. And you put that onto San Diego, now you're talking. That really does help their defense.
Agreed.
All right. Number 13, New Orleans Saints. You are on the clock, originally selecting Jamal Brown, the offensive tackle, who would go on to be an All-Pro.
Yes, he was a good pick, but is that the pick I ended up wanting to go with?
Let's find out. What are you doing?
Let's take a look at the team. Well, points for 31st out of 32. Eek. They didn't have very much offense. Points against, 20th of 32. Oof. Defense wasn't very good either. Wow. Let's see what's on their roster. QB, Aaron Brooks.
Who?
That's an interesting start. Then let's go down to the next QB. Todd Bowman. Okay. This explains why they ended up trying to trade for Breeze later, huh?
I think they signed him, didn't trade for him.
Yeah, that's right. They ended up
because San Diego lowballed him
cut him
because of the injury. Surgery.
Yeah, yep. They let him go. You're right. Either way, my point is that it makes sense why they ended up trying to chase after Breeze.
Yep.
I don't remember if was that the next year that happened. I think it was next year, right? 2006, 2007. So
let me take a look. Yeah, they would. After this offseason, he would be signed in 06.
So knowing that, there is question marks of, do I take that? Do I weigh that into account or not? Obviously, I can't 100% weigh that in because at this point in the draft, they can't know that that's going to happen. But I know it's going to happen, so I can't say that I'm not biased in a slight degree of, do I need QBs or is there other positions that I'm going to focus on? We'll see. Then we look at running backs. Antoine Smith, not a bad running back. Not fantastic. Who else did we end up having? Fred McAfee. Yeah. Deuce McAllister.
Ace Deuce and a whole lot of use.
Right.
He was actually really good.
He was.
Sadly,
and then Anthony Thomas.
Sadly, Deuce McAllister would wind up on IR that year.
Yeah, he would. Overall, the running back room wasn't bad. It's serviceable. Wide receivers, Joe Horn and Dante Stallworth. Not bad. What else do we have, right?
Also, please do not forget. Please do not do as is here Akeem like that.
Azir Akeem.
That dude was amazing.
Yeah, he's still there. Michael Lewis. The running back Nate Poole. I mean, their wide receiver room is not bad. Not great, not bad.
Yeah, that's true.
And then so I saw tight end. They had Ernie Conwell. Ernie Conwell. Okay. What did they had on their offensive line already? I mean, their center was a Pro Bowler, LaCharles Bentley. So doing okay there. Wayne Gandy, Kendall Jacobs, Montre Holland. Now let's look at defense. What do we got on defense? Well, not Not a whole lot, but there is some. Let me see here. Mike McKenzie. He was a linebacker. I think no, he's a cornerback. He was the life corner. Then we had Fred Thomas at right corner. Linebackers, you had Colby Bachwalt. Gosh, I can't even say that way. Ronald McKinnon, which looks like he did nothing. Cedric Hodge, which looks like he did nothing. Uh, then we have a DN of Charles Grant, Willie Whitehead, Brian Young, Darren Howard. I mean, some okay pieces there, but the big ones that stand out obviously is linebacker group. And I'm like, linebackers, that seems like a problem, but is that the direction I want to go? And I'm not 100% convinced if that's the direction I end up wanting to go or not. So I thought about it for a second and went, well, I could still do that. DNs are still kind of a question mark, right? Like Charles Grant,
Will Smith.
Darren, huh?
They have Will Smith.
Yeah, but at this point, I don't know. Where is he at? Hold on. Yeah, was he injured?
400. Doesn't say on mine that he was, but 459 total tackles and 67.5 sacks in his career.
No, he's still good, but I don't know why he wasn't labeled as a starter then.
He might have been. Let me see here, because he was only picked in 04.
Yeah, he was picked in 04, so
he
maybe
was picked
he
the year before this.
Yet.
Yeah, so they didn't have enough.
Yep, they might just not have played him much.
Yeah, they didn't have enough trust in him yet, but knowing what he's going to become.
Right. I know he Pro Bowls in 2006. No, he's still good, but like I'm looking at, well, do we pair him up with another stud?
Well, you got Charles Grant.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry to tell you, I'm not a lover of Charles Grant. I just never was.
Yeah, but
I mean, at this point, like
430 total tackles and 47.
Yeah, but in 2004 and 2005, 2003 and 2004 is where he got most of his sacks. Everything after that kind of is not as good. Like, I'm looking at it right now. Like, 2003 he had 10 sacks, and 2004 he had 10.5. 2005 is 2.5. Then goes up to 6, 2.5, 3, 5. Like, he's obviously peaked. He's already peaked. Do I get another one? I could. Again, I could. Do I want to go that way? I don't know if I will. I could. I don't know if I will though. I'm just making a point that I could.
No, you totally could, and I'm not going to be mad that if you do. I'm just saying.
But I'm going to do something a little different. I am going to do something a little different, and I know that they need linebackers, and that's the direction I'm actually going to go. And I was debating between a defensive end or a linebacker. That's really what I was trying to get at. So the question is, who do I go with? Well, I'm going to choose a very interesting pick. A pick that I think is going to get a lot of why, and because I think it's going to be fun. And so I'm going to choose a linebacker out of California that was originally undrafted, Lorenzo Alexander.
I didn't even have him on my list.
Yep, I went with Lorenzo Alexander.
Okay.
Pro Bowler. He was a Pro Bowler, or two-time Pro Bowler, actually. Ended up with 33 sacks, a lot of tackles, and quite a few pass deflections. So he was actually a pretty decent linebacker. Was he amazing? No, but he's far better than what they have.
I'll give you that. Okay. So, number 14, the Carolina Panthers on the clock. Now, originally they picked Thomas Davis, outside linebacker. That wasn't a bad pick at all. He's from Georgia. That wound up being a really, really good pick for them. But is it the way I'm going to go? Let's take a look. What does Carolina actually need? Well, so first thing I did was look at their quarterback room. Jake Delhomme. Okay, well, he was average. Wasn't great, but he was average. All right, so then I looked a little further. What do they have for running backs? Steven Davis. Oh, okay. Well, he's going to get injured. And what does his career look like at this point? And is it downhill from here? Kind of. If you really want to take a look at it. Yeah, he would be gone to St. Louis after the season and then retire.
Hmm.
So, what do they have behind him? Deshaun Foster and stuff.
And stuff. Yeah, fair.
All right. So, what are we looking at for wide receivers? Oh, Steve Smith and Ricky Prohl. Okay. Tight ends? Chris Magnum, Michael Gaines, Mike Seidman. All right. It's not horrible. That's not great, but not horrible.
Mm-hmm.
So, continuing down the list, their offensive line is good. Todd Fordham, Jordan Gross, Travell Wharton. They got some stuff there. I'm not too worried about that. Defensive linemen, Brenson Buckner. All right, that's pretty good. Julius Peppers, okay. Mike Rucker. All right. What about linebackers? Vinny Siriku, Dan Morgan, Brandon Short, Will Witherspoon. Nah. We got problems, buddy. They do have Chris Gamble and Ricky Manning and Marlon McCree in their secondary, and Mike Minter, so they should be good there. So definitely linebackers is where I'm looking, but should it be Thomas Davis? I'm going to go. No, I'm not going to take Thomas Davis.
Fair enough.
He was a good pick.
Very good pick. Yeah.
He was a great outside linebacker pick. Now, did they have anything else that I missed? Nope. That was pretty much it. So, what are we going to do? I am going to take a different player. I don't remember where he went. Oh, the next pick, literally.
Yeah, okay. You butthole. I was going to pick him next.
Out of Texas, I'm going to take linebacker Derek Johnson.
Yep. He was literally going to be my next pick.
Yeah,
I had him pegged as my next pick.
I think he had just a little bit better career than Davis. Davis had a great career, but
They're very similar, but yeah.
Very similar, but I like Johnson a little better. They both had extremely long careers. You can't go wrong really picking either one of them. I also thought about Merriman here just because of, the explosiveness that he had.
Explosiveness, exactly. Yeah.
But I decided against it overall, just knowing that his career would nosedive
just the way it would go. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
That's fair.
So now we are at number 15, Kansas City Chiefs. You are on the clock.
They originally picked Derek Johnson. I cannot select Derek Johnson here. Funnily enough, that was the one time where I was going to be like, actually, they picked the perfect person for what they need. And now I can't pick him.
Well, the thing is...
However, I was going to say, I could pick Davis here. I could replace him.
Absolutely.
Here. I absolutely could do that. However, did I decide to do that? That's a good question. Because now I have to debate if I'm going to or not, or if I'm going to do something wild and crazy.
Take a punter.
I don't know if I want to go that crazy, but I could. So, 15 is Kansas, right? Kansas City Chiefs. And when I'm looking at their team, I immediately go points for 6th of 32. They had a good offense, just like they do now, so I'm not surprised. Points against, 16th of 32. Defense is okay, serviceable. It's mid-range. Could be better. So right away, I'm thinking, well, okay, let's see what we got, though, right? This is something to debate about. I don't even want to go over their starters for their offense because it's ridiculous. I mean, you had Trent Green, Larry Johnson, Tony Richardson, Eddie Kinson, Sammy Parker, Tony Gonzalez, Brian Waters as their left guard, left tackle was Willie Rofe, right guard was Will Shields. They were good on offense. They didn't need offense.
They were stacked.
And then I start going defense. Well, what do we have on defense? We have Eric Hicks, left defensive end. Not bad. Right defensive end, Jared Allen. All right, I don't need to touch defensive ends. We're good there.
I think he's going to be gone the next season or the season after.
I believe he's gone No, he does not leave until 2008.
Okay.
So we can still service that for a while.
Yep.
We're good there.
Okay.
And then even Eric Hicks is not a bad end at all. Well, let's look at the tackles. John Browning and Lionel Dalton. Yeah, all right. Linebackers, Derek Johnson, who they ended up wanting to pick, but they couldn't pick him, so they needed a spot there. So they're now missing what they had as their left linebacker. And then the other two that they have was Kawaki Mitchell. I think I said his name completely wrong. And Kendrell Bell. Okay, right? But then you look at corners and you go, okay, Patrick Surtain and Eric Warfield. I don't need to really do much with that. It's okay group. That's a pretty decent group right there. And then their safeties are Sammy Knight and Greg Wesley. Question marks on safeties, but I'm not going to fault them for that. Safeties are hard to come back, actually. So really when I'm looking at it, I'm like, I was kind of scratching my head here because I was like, the obvious pick now at this point, and it was one that I obviously pointed out, is linebacker, right? They wanted Derek Johnson. They didn't get Derek Johnson. So going linebacker would make sense here. Do they need to go linebacker? Well, what else did they have on their team, right? They had Sean Barber as a linebacker. Kendrell Bell, I believe, is the starting right.
I believe so.
They had Keanu Ray Fox. They had Chris Griffin, Boomer Grigsby. Was there any others on here? Rich Scallion, don't know that one. I mean, they had some decent linebackers there that looked like they could be okay. Like, nothing fantastic, but again, I can understand why they went linebacker. But do I do something crazy and meme-worthy here instead? Maybe I do. Maybe I decided to go meme-worthy here. Because I looked and went, who's their kicker? Their kicker is Lawrence Tynes. I decided to look him up, and he was okay. He only lasted for a couple years, though, so it tells me that wasn't good enough. So then I thought, what's available for kickers? Well, there is one who went undrafted out of Penn State, Robbie Gould, and that's who they're picking.
Man, the only other time anybody has ever taken a kicker in the first round that I can remember, I think there was twice. I think there was Roberto Aguayo.
Yeah.
And Sebastian Janikowski.
Janikowski, yep.
Seabass.
To
Who
be
actually
fair,
wound
though,
up being pretty good.
pretty good. To be fair, though, Robbie Gould is actually a fantastic kicker and a really, is definitely an upgrade for what they have. In no way would you ever pick him here as a first round pick. You just would. But their team is already pretty decent. They didn't have high needs, and I just thought this would be funny.
Well, all right. I'm not going to get too mad at you for it, although I do think you're insane, but that's all right. That's what these drafts are about. They're fun. We're here having fun.
I had to throw into a one weirdo, and out of all of them, if you're going to complain about it being the Chiefs, then you can fuck right off. We know what the Chiefs become. Shut up.
All right. So it's 16. Houston Texans. You're on the clock. Okay, this is the first one where I just went, they can use everything. They are a brand new team at this point. They have only been in the... Let me see here. They've been around since, what, 02?
I believe.
And their previous record was 2-14. I do believe they made some trades that forced them further down in the round, but I think helped them out in the long run. So, who do they have right now in their quarterback room? David Carr. I mean, he could have been worse. He could have been better.
I think if you give him more protection, he would have been better.
I do not disagree with that. Running backs. Jason Anderson, Tony Hollings, who?
Mm-hmm.
They really didn't have much in the way. Dominic Davis. They didn't really have much in the way of running backs. So that's definitely something I could look at. How about wide receivers? Oh, Andre Johnson. Okay.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
All right, fair enough. Tight ends, Mark Bruner. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Offensive lineman. Chester Pitts, okay, he's fine, I guess. Zach Wiegert, okay, I guess. You did have some injuries there, but okay. So overall, it's all right. It's serviceable enough. Defense. Defensive end, Robert Smith? Jerry Deloach? Problematic. Seth Payne is a nose tackle. Not great. Probably use that too. So pretty much anything on the defensive line works. What are we looking at for outside linebackers and linebacking core right now? Jason Babin, outside linebacker. Okay, he was decent. He was all right. You know, you could deal with that. Kylie Wong, okay, not bad either. Inside linebackers, Moreland Greenwood, Frank Chamberlain, Deshaun Polk. Nah, none of those names ring a bell. And defensive backs, what are you looking at? Glenn Earl at strong safety. You had Dunta Robinson at cornerback. He was really good. And that's about the best you can do there. Because honestly, at this point, you know, both free safety and strong safety definitely need some help. So, and they had Philip Buchanan as well, but he was injured at cornerback. But overall, that's not horrible. So what do you really need? Well, a running back, but I'm going to choose to help out the defense because the defense is definitely lackluster. Where do they need the most help at? Probably getting to the quarterback because none of those fuckers are going to do it for you.
No.
So, who am I going to pick for them? I'm going to take the formerly undrafted defensive end, Cameron Wake.
Cameron Wake, yep. I had him on my list. That's somebody I wanted later down, though, if you didn't pick him.
That dude is a beast. He is going to run people over, and he's going to be the original version of J.J. Watt now.
He was actually when I was talking about defensive ends that I could have taken earlier. He was the one that I was looking at originally.
That's the one I thought you were probably looking at. There's a couple. There's some really good ones on here.
Yeah.
But to me, Cameron Wake, Houston would not go wrong selecting Cameron Wake and just letting him run over people and get to the cornerback.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Alrighty. Next on the list at 17th overall.
That would
Cincinnati.
It's Cincinnati. Yeah, Cincinnati.
You were on the
Bengals.
clock.
They
originally picking. I should say Houston originally selected Travis Johnson, a defensive tackle out of Florida State. It didn't work. Cincinnati would originally select David Pollock, a linebacker out of Georgia.
Didn't quite work out. Wasn't terrible, but wasn't great. Actually, he was kind of bad, to be honest. But yeah, it is what it is. So, was that the right... Bird, get out of here. Was that the right position for them to draft? Well, let's look at what they had. Well, points for, 4th of 32. Okay, they're having no issues putting up points. Points against, 22 out of 32. All right, so they have some defensive issues. Okay, maybe linebacker does make sense. So let's take a look at what their roster is. Just to point out why I don't need to address the the offense at all. QB was Carson Palmer in his 2nd year, by the way. So, don't need to touch that. Rudy Johnson was the running back, which, he was actually pretty decent at this point. Like, I don't know how long he was great for, but he was pretty decent at this point. Fullback, they had Jeremy Johnson. Wide receiver, TJ. I'm not going to even try to say his last name.
Zeta.
Pretty decent. Then they had Chad Johnson. Yeah, fair enough. Don't need to touch that. And then you look at what they had for their line, and you got Levy Jones, Eric Steinbach, Rich Bram, Bobby Williams, Willie Anderson. Like, all right, fair enough. They're pretty good at on offense, to be honest here. But what's their defense look like? Well, I mean, left defensive end, they have Justin Smith. Okay, decent. Not great, but decent. Then the right defensive end is Robert Gears. It's a hard name to say. Gears. It's a weird last name. My tongue doesn't want to roll that way. Not bad. I don't know if that would be good, but not bad. Linebacker room, I mean, we have Landon Johnson, we have Brian Simmons. Who else did they have as linebackers? Caleb Miller, Hannibal Navies. That's a fantastic name, Hannibal. Um, Nate Webster, Marcus Wilkins. I'm not a fan of their linebacker room. Just gonna put it blunt. Their linebacker room could definitely have some work. Uh, Cornerbacks. Deltha O'Neal. Don't know if that's how you say his name, but he. He's good. He's a Pro Bowler. He did well. And Troy James, which, man, Troy James is Troy James. I mean, that doesn't wow me, but they have a good solid number one corner for sure. And then looking at the rest of their corners, it's like pretty much nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go a corner. I could go linebacker.
There are definitely some available.
Yep, I could go corner. I could go linebacker. Safety is. Yeah, I could go with safety too, but I just don't. I'm not good at getting safety. Sometimes it feels like, unless they're labeled as a defensive back that ends up being a good safety. So I had to decide: do I go with a linebacker or a corner? And that's basically what I was looking at when I choose corners. They're labeled as defensive backs when I was looking at them, but regardless, I tried to. If I was looking at ones that I thought were good corners, I tried to piece them that way. So I was debating on, do I go linebacker or corner? And I wasn't sure 100% which way I want to go. In fact, I'm still kind of debating on... Hold on. I gotta find where these... So many good options. Like, there's a lot of actually. I have like on my list right now actually more options than I thought I was going to have at this point. Ooh. Man, this is tough decisions actually. As we get down here, it's starting to get a little tougher. Man. It's probably going to end up being a linebacker, but I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anyone. Now I'm just looking for one specific player that I have on my list. I'm like, gotta go find his stats real quick and be like, do I want to take him instead? That's what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to find.
Well, because there's a couple of good inside linebackers.
Yeah.
There's at least 2 outside linebackers that I like. And then there are several corners still that I think are very good.
Yeah. Man. I think I'm going to go linebacker. I think I'm definitely going to go linebacker here. Now the question is, which of the 2 linebackers do I like here? Do I want to pick?
You're going to go out then?
I'm just picking linebacker. I'm not necessarily picking specifically inside or out.
Okay.
They need a linebacker, and I know that they need, honestly, almost any linebacker is going to be improvement over what they have. Like, whether it be inside or out, because they need both. And I think this is a spot where it makes sense to do it. I think I'm going to pick the linebacker out of Georgia, Thomas Davis. I think I'm going to place him here. I think this makes sense because they really need a linebacker, and I think the fact that Thomas Davis is still on the board, I think they'd take him if he was here. It just makes sense. I mean, there's no question. I mean, Thomas Davis was still good, like you said, but not as good as Derek Johnson, but definitely good enough to still be a couple picks from here. Just, yeah. Honestly, if if I didn't put the kicker as Robbie Gould for Kansas City, they probably would have picked Thomas Davis, actually, but...
Yeah, I understand. So, 18th pick overall, Minnesota Vikings, you're back on the clock. And that's me, originally picking Erasmus James, the defensive end out of Wisconsin, and that did not go well. Now, you've already taken care of the defense for us by selecting the Hall of Fame linebacker, DeMarcus Ware. So that leaves me with the conundrum of definitely improving the offense. And I have the same conundrum you do. Their running back room is serviceable. Can you squeeze another year or two out of Brad Johnson? Are the quarterbacks you have left on the list, are they worth the pick? Or would the running backs be more worth the pick? And so you really have to sit down and decide, what are you looking at? Because those are definitely the two that I've narrowed
the
this
two
down
obvious
to.
ones.
Yeah. So now what you have to do is have to determine, okay, who do you think is worth grabbing at this point that hasn't been grabbed yet? And there's a few guys that did pretty well.
There's a couple I can think of that I could easily pick here.
Exactly.
It's just the question about which way do you go.
There is a real question here about what do you do, how do you take care of this? Because I could also still upgrade the defense if I felt like
You could.
Yeah. There are some.
There's still other spots you could put in. Yeah.
Yep, there are some definitive people here that I feel definitely could go in here. And the question is, who do I want to put in here?
The other question too is, how's the offensive line?
I don't have them really needing an offensive line.
Okay,
at this point.
Just wanted to make sure. I couldn't remember.
So I'm going to take a look at be pretty hard to.
There's more running backs I'd put here. There's only like one or two QBs I can think of that I'd even select.
Yeah, and that's you know what, I am going to go with going ahead and upgrading our quarterback room, and I am going to select out of Harvard, the Ivy League University, Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yep. Honestly,
I went and I looked at the stats. He's had some really good years.
Oh, he's had some good seasons.
He's just been all over the place.
Mm-hmm. He never just stayed in one place for very long because everyone thought that like he'd put up good numbers and then it'd be like, oh, but we're gonna draft our future QB, and he's just like, fine, whatever.
So having Minnesota grab him and tab him as a future QB, considering how smart he is and how well he could learn playbooks, I think that alleviates that glut of, we're going to draft our new QB every other year.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they actually believe in him and give him the time.
That would be the key. But knowing what he's become and what he can become and what he can do, I think this is the best pick that you can put here.
I agree.
To be totally honest, I thought about a running back here because there's a couple that I would put here, but in the end, I just think it makes better sense if you use Fitzmagic here.
Yep. Yeah, I had Fitzmagic actually on my list, like several picks above, and I just kept going, they don't necessarily need a QB
and that's
here.
where I was kind of at with it,
and
too.
So it kept coming up, because I'm like, I know, I'm just trying to decide, like, where would his draft really go, right? Compared to what the teams really need, and that's really what it came down to, because there was, like I said, a couple teams where I was like, they could have drafted him, but they had so many other needs at other spots where it just, ultimately they didn't do it.
Alrighty. 19th overall, the St. Louis Rams are on the clock. They would originally select Alex Barron, offensive tackle from Florida State.
Which, yeah,
Wasn't horrible.
interesting choice. Interesting choice.
Wasn't horrible.
I don't
There
know.
were better picks available.
There was definitely better picks available.
So
So
take us
first off, let's take a look at points for and points against. Points for we have at 11th of 32. So, they're scoring points. They're not scoring probably as much as you'd like them to, but they're definitely above, halfway point. Points against, 31st of 32. Oof. That's questioning. Let's take a look at their defense then. Why are they having issues on the defense? We'll go over offense later because their offense is weird. Defense. Well, right away, your left defensive end is Littered Little. That's actually not a bad player. That's actually pretty decent. And then your right defensive end is Anthony Hargrave. Or Hargrove. Sorry, not Hargrave. Hargrove. There is a difference. Still, not a bad player. Like, their defensive ends were not bad at this point. Left defensive tackle was Ryan Pickett. Right defensive tackle was Jimmy Kennedy. Not bad. Not great, not bad. And then let's see what they had for linebackers. Pisa Tinoisoma? Samoa?
I believe that is Pisa Tui something. Hold on. I'll be able to say it once I look at it.
They also had Chris Claiborne and Dexter Coakley. So linebackers are, questionable.
Tino Samoa.
Tinoisoma. Yeah, it's a weird last name. Anyways, linebackers are questionable in my book. Then you have corners DeJuan Gross and Travis Fisher. Those are your starting corners.
I will also point out that they had Chris Claiborne and Dexter Coakley as linebackers, but they're both
I said
injured.
that, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they ended up getting injured, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm not going to super worry about linebackers, because, while that sounds bad, they were good players. But their cornerbacks, oof. Cornerback room looks like they have some issues. Well, let's see what else they have, just to make sure that there isn't other corners that they might have on their team somewhere. Well, they're all listed as DBs on my book, so let's see here. We have Dwight Anderson. I don't think he was a corner. OJ, were you a corner? Was OJ a corner?
No,
OJ
Atawoge was a rookie at this point.
He was a free safety. Yep, he becomes a free safety. Who else did they have? I don't think Dwayne Carpenter, and I believe he didn't really do much, as far as I can tell. He was a rookie, so he's not on here. Terry Fair. Terry Fair, what are you doing, Terry Fair? You're a right cornerback. But at this point, you're pretty much at the end of your career. So, maybe not great. So corners so far is what I'm looking at. It's yeah, that looks like they need a corner. Looks like they need corner. Oh, Corey Ivy. Was he any good? Not really. Continuing on down the list, and wow, that's a little sad. Okay, so corners are definitely an issue. Corners seem like an issue. Their linebacking is okay. Even their strong safety, Adam Pachulete, and free safety was Mike Fury. They were okay. Their offense was weird though, because even though they had a decent offense, you look at their QB as Mike Bolger, and I'm like, who the hell is that?
Mark.
Yeah, I said Mark.
You said Mike.
I definitely said Mark. I definitely said Mark that time.
Mike again.
I 100% know I said a Mark that time, because I said Mark Bolger.
And it's not Bulger, it's Bulger.
I don't care. He's got a shitty last name. Not my problem.
And actually, he wasn't horrible. He was the heir apparent.
No. Yeah, it's just weird though. It's not somebody you go, oh yeah, I know who that is. Most people aren't gonna be like, I know who that is.
I do.
That's because you're weird. Steven Jackson was their running back, which was not a bad running back.
They still had Marshall Faulk as well.
That too. And then they also had, for wide receivers, Isaac Bruce, Kevin Curtis,
Dane
Torrey
Walker,
Holt.
Torrey Holt.
Yeah, like it's just weird because you're like, man, there's good offense, but that's a weird QB to be like. It's not one that I would immediately go, yeah, that makes sense. But it wasn't. He was definitely not a bad QB. Like after looking into his stats and everything, he was a good, serviceable QB. Like not amazing, but definitely good.
For a couple of years, he was really good, and then he just
Yeah.
kind of sank quick.
Exactly. So at this point, looked like he was still doing okay. So I don't think I need to do much with that. Really, I'm looking at somebody who could play corner, or potentially could be a good corner. There's a couple of those on the
There's
list.
several of those.
The question is, which way do I want to go? Well, let's first. What were you doing? No. Maybe. Don't know if I want to go with him. I think there's better options. I can't pick that guy because he's off my list. I forgot to remove him. Let me see. I gotta find this one. I had him marked down and I don't have him. What position did he play? Maybe. That might still not be a bad choice. But I don't think they need that one right now. Do I go with you, though? No, maybe not. Maybe not that one either.
Phenomena.
Let me see if I can. I gotta find this player now because there's one player that I'm now on my list that I'm thinking I'm probably gonna pick, but I gotta find him, make sure that he's the one that I want. Come on, where are you? Because there was a couple others that I had on my list that I thought I would take over this person, but then I'm not sure if I want to do that, and I want to make sure that this is who I think it is. Ah, God, no. Why? That's not... Okay, so the guys that I was originally looking at, I might not be able to pick. Maybe. Because they're good, but I don't know if I want to... Don't know if I want to put them at corner. I think that's really what I'm looking at. Like, I have a couple good players that I want to do, but I don't know if they'd be good as corners. What about you? Maybe you'd be good at corner. I could put him at corner. Would he be good at corner? Would he be good there, though? I could. That might not be bad. That might not be a bad choice. It's not my favorite choice. Let me see if there's a different one. I realize I'm now doing this like freehand. A lot of the guys I wanted to pick here, I realized are more like safeties, right? And I could pick them and just put them into corner because they're similar-ish positions. The difference is safeties are typically, from my understanding, more smaller and quicker than the corners are.
Sometimes, and sometimes safeties, their whole job is to hit more frequently.
Yeah, and so I don't know if putting players that are traditionally safeties in corner roles would work all the time. Like sometimes it can, because there are some players that can swap between the two, and there are others that don't, right? And that's what I'm concerned with if I pick a player where I like. There's a couple that I looked at, and I looked at their stats and went, okay, so they're more safeties, and I'm like worried if I throw them in to as corners that they might not be as good, right?
I understand.
Um,
I've still got like 4 corners on my list.
yeah, I have. I currently have 2 that I have pulled up as corners that I would do here, but I'm just trying to decide if I want to do them or not. Which ones do I like better? That's really what I'm looking at, is which one do I like better. You know, I think I will. I think I will go this way. I think I'll go this way. I think I'm actually gonna. I didn't think this player would actually be even available here, so I think I'm actually gonna select him here because I did not think. I didn't even have him as a possible pick here because I thought for sure he'd be gone by now. And I completely forgot that he was still on my list. So I'm actually gonna choose the cornerback out of Auburn, Carlos Rogers.
That's who I thought you were going to go with.
I was originally going. Funny thing is, when I was looking through my list, I was originally looking at Corey Webster, and I was like, "Oh, he'd be good." And then immediately as I scroll back up, into the first round, I was like, "Wait, Carlos Rogers is still here? What the hell?"
Corey Webster is also not bad.
No,
And
that's
there's
why
2 others on this list that I also like.
Yes, there is definitely probably others. There's. I noticed that a lot of the guys that I have as DBs that I love are safeties, which I was like, God damn it.
Yeah, there's a couple on there that I looked at and I go, oh, those were fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd be good corners though, and that's the problem.
But there's at least one undrafted guy that I think made a fantastic corner for a while.
Yes, there. I know exactly who it is, and I thought about putting him here, but then I decided that Carlos Rogers would be the better pick here.
And you're not wrong. I think he had a better career.
Yeah.
All right, so that all being done, now I get to draft at number 20, Dallas Cowboys. We are back on the clock.
We're back on the clock.
And originally here they drafted defensive end Marcus Spears. That was
Not a bad pick.
Not a bad
Not
pick
a bad
at
pick.
all.
Very good pick, actually.
Now you have already gone and taken care of their running back room for me. As previously mentioned, there were a bunch of things that they could potentially use here.
Yeah.
And looking at it all, the question that I have for myself is, do I want to go and increase potentially the wide receiver room that is getting a little long in the tooth?
Fair.
Or do I want to look at potentially helping out their defense? Because they obviously felt they needed some help there. They went double defense in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely felt like they needed some help at the defensive end spot.
Yep.
That was something that they definitely wanted to get their hands on. They also felt they needed help at outside linebacker, which is why they drafted DeMarcus Ware where they drafted him. And they could also use, because I have them down as also potentially needing a free safety. So
Right.
my question to me was, what do I want to do? So what is, looking at my list, do I consider the best player that they still have available in this area? And there was one name that jumped right off the page at me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I am going to fix their defense.
Okay.
That is definitely the way that I am going to go. I believe he's down here just a little bit. Let me find him on here now.
Oh, you're good.
There we go. From Cincinnati, the Dallas Cowboys will select defensive end Trent Cole.
Yeah.
And I really was like, there's like 3 guys right there. One of them is indeed a Dallas Cowboys pick from later on. Um,
Yep.
Marcus Spears is also on my list, by the way. He's just further down. Trent Cole had a better career, and there was another guy right under him that I went,
Cole's gone.
"Ah, do I take him?" And then I was like, nope, I'm going to take Trent Cole.
Trent Cole was really good.
Trent Cole was really good. And it screws the Eagles later.
That it does.
So,
Okay, when was he drafted? What
fifth
pick was he at?
fifth round.
Was he in the 5th round?
He was a 5th round, I think 130 something, 146.
146, yep, I just found it. Yep. Yeah, I can't believe he was that far down. When I saw that, I was like, holy crap, what the hell?
Yeah, he was really good. So, there's not much that you can say negative about that. I think it really does help the defensive side of their ball, which they apparently felt they needed some help with. I think they missing out on DeMarcus Ware, that's going to help a lot in the future.
That'll help, yep.
All right,
100%.
so moving on to pick number 21, Duval. Jacksonville is on the clock.
Yep.
Original pick, Matt Jones, wide receiver out of Arkansas.
He was okay.
Meh.
Yeah, like looking at his stats, I'm like, he was okay. He wasn't great, not bad though, but certainly not great. So let's look at their team then. Well, right away, there's a couple of interesting notes. Points for, they're 12th of 32, which, I mean, again, above half, not bad. Points against, 6th of 32. So their defense was pretty decent at this point. Surprisingly, like, we're almost like Saxonville, except for it's not Saxonville yet. But they had a pretty decent defense. I mean, Reggie Hayward, Marcus Stroud. I mean, what else do we got here? Daryl Smith, Mike Peterson, like Paul Spicer. Like they had a good defense. Now let's look at their offense. Their QB is Brian Leftwich. That's right. It's the exact same Brian Leftwich you think it is. He played QB for Jacksonville.
Actually wasn't horrible either.
No, not bad. He actually was not bad at this point. I don't know how long he played for, but did he play? He played several years, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he played until 2012. Wow.
Yeah.
But he was a starter for Jacksonville from 2003 to 2006, and then he moved on. So, at this point, who else do we have as quarterback? Just a check. David Garand, I think is how you say his name.
I think it's David Gerard.
Is it Gerard? Okay. Quinn Gray. Okay. Well, that's concerning, but we have Leftwich for now, and we know he's going to stick around for at least a little bit longer, so maybe we can hold off on QB.
David Gerard.
David Gerard? That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
Running back, Fred Taylor. Not a bad running back, right? What else do we have? We have Rich Alexis. We have Alvin. Nope, he was a rookie.
My favorite name, LeBrandon Toefield.
That is a pretty good name.
That's a great name.
Toefield.
Toefield.
They had a lot of running backs that they ended up selecting apparently, because I'm seeing a lot of them ended up being rookies apparently.
2 that I see.
Yeah. 2. I thought there was 3. Maybe it was just 2. Still interesting. However, one thing I noticed was looking at their wide receivers, and their wide receivers was Jimmy Smith and Ernest Wilford.
Mm-hmm.
Which they're not bad wide receivers at all. But let's look at what they had for the room, right? We have Cortez Hankton, Matt Jones.
He was a rookie. He's the one that was originally drafted.
You're right. He was the one that was a rookie. Apologies. I gotta pay attention to that. That's also a rookie. So they selected 2 rookies as wide receivers at this point that I'm seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Smith. Let's see here.
He was amazing.
Yeah, but I think he was 36 at this point.
Yeah.
So he's aging.
I think this is his last year, in fact.
It wouldn't surprise me. Let me double check that actually since I'm here.
Yep, 05, last year.
Yep. So. So I'm
Up over
thinking,
1,000 yards, though. Jesus Christ.
yeah, he was still had a good year. So so it's one of those things where I'm looking, okay, wide receiver does make sense. I can now see why they selected wide receiver here. They obviously selected two just because they have for their issues, and on top of that, like you have Jimmy Smith leaving. So I can understand them going that way. What do they have for tight end though? Kyle Brady. Not a name I'm familiar with. What else do they have? Kyle. No, I already said Kyle Brady. Hold on. There's another one. Here we go. Brian Jones. Not a name I'm familiar with. It's a very white name to say about. To be honest with you. And George Reister.
I think that's right.
I don't know if I know who that is either. The name is slightly
Reister?
familiar. Yeah, Reister. I mean, he looks like he was okay, but not like he was not a great tight end. So my first thoughts are we need someone who's going to assist in catching the ball, because that's really what it looks like we're getting at this point. Is we need more people to catch the ball. And wide receiver makes a lot of sense here for that reason, so I can understand why they went wide receiver. However, I think that even with that said, that there is a very specific tight end here who's really good at catching the football that would really help ease up their mind. It is a tight end out of Virginia, Keith Miller.
I cannot be mad about that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
That makes way more sense than I want it to, and it's a good pick. That's a really good pick. All right, so that would put on the clock the Baltimore Ravens, who originally selected Mark Clayton, a wide receiver out of Oklahoma, who, meh. That's the best way I can put him.
I mean, he wasn't bad.
He wasn't
just
bad,
meh.
but he was
Like
just
he's
kind
like
of
a wide receiver 3. He's like a slot dude, right? He wasn't. Yeah.
So I looked at their stuff and thought, okay, well, what do they have? Their quarterback room, Kyle Bowler. He wasn't horrible, but he certainly wasn't what everybody hoped he was going to be.
Fair.
Who do they have behind him? Anthony Wright and Brian St. Pierre. Okay, so quarterback is something we could look at potentially.
Yep.
Running backs, Jamal Lewis. Okay, moving on. Wide receivers, Derek Mason. Okay. But at this point, if my memory serves, he's starting to get just a little bit older. But they had just brought him in this year, too. It's not too bad, actually. Because he would play till 2011.
Okay, well then,
So,
yeah.
and he was only drafted in 97.
Okay.
So
he still has. Yeah.
Yeah, he's doing good.
That's not bad.
But behind him, they've got DeVar Darling, Randy Himes, Patrick Johnson, Clarence Moore. So now I can understand why they were trying to find another wide receiver.
Another wide receiver, yeah.
Tight ends, Darnell Dinkins, Todd Heap. Now, if I remember, Todd Heap was actually...
I think he was pretty good, yeah.
He was really good. So, promote Todd Heap, and you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. He'll be a pass catcher for you. What did you have on your offensive line? Well, Orlando Brown, Jonathan Ogden, and, Mike Flynn for your center. So really, could you use an offensive lineman? Yeah, probably a guard or a center. Wouldn't be horrible to pick here. Protect what you can out of Kyle Bowler. Okay, not a bad call. What else do we got here? Looking down a little further, defense is something they were actually really good at because this was the year of Peter Bulware and Ray Lewis and, yeah, that kind of defense. But they did have one glaring hole at defense, and that would be the defensive end. Although they did have Terrell Suggs, who played both end and outside linebacker at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So you can make a case for that. And in their secondary, they had, oh, look, Chris McAllister, Ed Reed, and Samari Roll. And Deion Sanders.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Okay, never mind. So really, it comes down to, do I want to try to fix the wide receiver room with what's here? Do I think one of these quarterbacks is still worth a draft? Or am I going to take an offensive guard?
Fair question.
Those are really the big questions. And you know what? I am going to take the offensive guard and protect Kyle Bowler. And then whoever else they get as their quarterback in the future. So, I'm going to take one that was taken just a little bit further down here. Out of Fresno State, I'm going to take the offensive guard, Logan Mankins.
Yeah.
Hard to say that's the wrong pick there.
I'm a little upset because he was my next. He was going to be my next pick. I literally had him as my number one spot for the next team. Yeah.
Yep. And
okay,
you know what?
Okay.
That is not. To me, that's a really good pick overall. You're going to go ahead and protect Bowler a little better. You're going to shore up your offensive line. You're going to help that out a little bit. And even though Bowler doesn't turn out to be the greatest quarterback of all time, you still have other options. And there will be other wide receivers. And you could even select the same guy, but in later rounds.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Moving on from that, 23, Oakland. The Oakland Raiders. You are on the clock. Original pick, Fabian Washington, quarterback from Nebraska. Not a bad pick, actually.
It wasn't a bad pick, but it's not
Is
a
it what
great
they
pick.
needed?
And it's definitely not what they needed at this spot. So, let's take a look at the Oakland Raiders. Well, right away, you notice some alarming stats. Points for, 23rd of 32, and points against, 25th of 32. Oof. They need some help. Let's take a look why. Well, right away, we have QB Kerry Collins, age 33. He's definitely kind of coming towards the end of whatever he is doing, which is playing quarterback. Well, what else do we have as quarterbacks? We have Marquise. I can't say his last name.
I believe it is. I believe.
Tua Sasopo? Tua Sasopo.
Tui. Tui.
Tua Sasopo? Tui, yeah.
I know how to
Anyway.
say that, but I can't wrap my tongue around it right now.
Either way, not a great quarterback room, to tell you, to be honest. That's concerning. So,
Tua
let's take...
Sosopo.
Yes. So, not a fantastic quarterback room. All right, well, that could be a need. The downside is, I honestly don't think there are really any QBs that I want to draft here. So, moving on. Running backs, we have Lamont Jordan. Definitely looks like he was pretty decent at this time. 27 years old, so he's still kind of young. Who else do we have backing him up right now? We have quite a few fullbacks, surprisingly. Where are your other running backs, my guys?
There's one.
Did you not have any other running
I
back?
had one.
Lamont Jordan was your only running back.
Justin Fargas.
Justin Fargas, did I miss him?
Yep.
I'm not seeing him on here. He's listed as a fullback on mine for some reason.
He was a running back.
Weird. Okay, I don't know why he's listed as fullback. Anyways, that's concerning because that's not great. Well, let's look at we obviously know they have plenty of fullbacks, so we're not going to go over those. Wide receiver, Randy Moss. That's a pretty good start. Wide receiver, Jerry Porter. That's also not a bad start. So, frankly, their wide receiver room isn't bad. Now, the question is, I don't remember Randy Moss staying at Oakland for very long.
He didn't.
In fact, he played at 2005 and 2006. So, who else do we have as as wide receivers here. I might have said running back, but I meant wide receivers if I did.
And then he got traded to New England.
Yes, where he stayed for a while.
Yes.
Um, so other wide receivers, we have Ronald Curry, Doug Gabriel. We already talked about Jerry Porter. Who else do we have here? Alvis Whitted, Randall Williams. I mean, their wide receiving room is not bad now, but it's going to take a substantial hit in the next couple years. But I don't think we need to worry about it right this second. Tight end Courtney Anderson, if I remember right, was actually not a bad tight end. We could look at O-line. I'm thinking O-line's probably not like. I mean, we have Barry Sims, Brad Badger, Adam Truo, Ron
Robert
Stone,
Gallery.
Robert Gallery. Like, their O-line was okay, but I wouldn't say it's like amazing, right? Then we look at defense, and we got some interesting defensive players here. We have Bobby Hamilton as the left defensive end. Right defensive end was Derek Burgess, who is a Pro Bowler, which is pretty good. I mean, I think if I remember right, actually had a crazy season in 2005. Then we have the tackles, which is Ted Washington and Warren Sapp, which Warren Sapp's old, but he's as well as Ted Washington, but they still did pretty decent, actually. Linebackers. At this point, ones that weren't rookies, they had middle linebacker Danny Clark. They had left linebacker was a rookie at that point.
Kirk Morrison.
Yep, he was a rookie. They ended up drafting. Let me see here. Corners, we had Namita Osamugoa. I can't say that.
Namdi Asamuga.
I know it's two N's. I hate that shit. And then right corner was they ended up having as a rookie.
They also had Charles Woodson.
Charles Woodson. I think, was he
Injured.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
But
so I was looking down and I'm yeah, they had him. Interesting. Their defense is like weird. Like they have some interesting pieces that I like, and then they have other pieces that I'm like, why though?
Mm-hmm.
Like the strong safety is Jared Cooper and free safety Stuart Schwigert. I don't know about you, but I don't remember those names.
Especially when you have Calvin Branch as a free safety.
Yeah, right. Did they actually have him?
Yeah.
Was he injured or something?
Nope.
Why do I not see him on here though?
Oh, it's probably a different Calvin Branch.
It's got to be a different one.
Yeah. Oh, he played at my old...
Oh yeah, I see him. This has got to be a different one though. He's
Yeah.
older.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different one.
Yeah.
So I could pick safeties here. I have quite a few options for that. I could pick safeties here. Do I want to go that way? I think it makes probably the most sense, to be honest. Question is, which one do I want to pick? I think there's... Do I want to pick him? No. I don't want to pick him. Erg. Maybe you. It's either going to be you or... Where was my other one? There's one other on here that I had that I knew was really good that I wanted to look at. Where did he go? Right here. So I think I'm going to pick between these two, and I need to decide which one I like better. It's actually kind of a tough choice. Is there... Okay, I think I'm going to go this way. I like them both, but I think I'm going to go this way. So I'm going to pick a free safety out of Louisville, Kerry Rhodes.
Definitely was on my list. Had him a little lower, but I can't say that that's a bad grab.
It was between him and one other that I was looking at, and I was trying to decide which one I liked better because they were very similar players. And I was having a tough time deciding which one I actually really liked better.
I totally understand that. So, moving on to the 24th overall pick of the draft, the Green Bay Packers are on the clock. Now, originally, Green Bay would select their quarterback of the future, Aaron Rodgers here. But Aaron Rodgers finally went number 1 overall, which he should have done originally. So now Green Bay has to figure out what they're going to do. So, taking a look at Green Bay, what did they actually need? Because at this point, they were still pretty damned good. And by not pissing off Brett Favre and grabbing Aaron Rodgers, maybe you hang on to him for another chunk of his career. And he ends up
maybe he never ends up...
Never ends up coming to Minnesota.
Yep.
So, your quarterback room is still Brett Favre and Craig Nall. Who do you have for running backs? Tony Fisher, Najee Davenport, who would get injured, Amon Green, who would get injured. So you really don't need a running back because all of those guys were pretty good. Who did you need? Who do you have for wide receivers? Antonio Chapman, Donald Driver, Ron Gardner. Yeah, okay, I think you're good with that. You also had Javon Walker, who would be injured, and Robert Ferguson, who would be injured. And if I remember right, all of those were pretty damn good.
Most of them were.
Yeah. Tight ends, Donald Lee. Okay. Good enough for me. Offensive linemen. Yeah, those are pretty good too. Defensive linemen. Well, let's see what we're looking at here. I mean, Kabir Gabaja-Biamila, Aaron Campman, Grady Jackson. I mean, it's not a lot of stuff, but you do have some good stuff in there. Now, who are we looking for? Linebackers. Nick Barnett, Neil Diggs, Paris Lennon. Okay, they're not horrible linebackers. So they're serviceable. How about everything else here? Well, defensive backs. Todd Franz, Al Harris, Mark Roman, Jason Horton. I mean, in reality, that's your weakest spot, is your defensive backs.
Mm-hmm.
Both safety
and... It always kind of has been.
Safety and corner. I mean, Ahmad Carroll is a corner, though, too, so you can't really be mad about that. But safety is definitely something that you probably need to look at here and actually think about. And both your free safety and your strong safety need some attention here. So, that is what we are going to look at today. The other guy here. Yeah. I'm going to grab a guy that they would grab eventually anyway, just later on. out of Bethune-Cookman College. Free safety, Nick Collins.
Nick Collins, yep. That was the one I was debating on if I wanted him instead of Kerry Rhodes.
Yeah. And he actually goes on to have a very, very, very good career.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, 415 tackles, 68 pass deflections, 21 interceptions. Yeah. Dude could play.
Oh, yeah.
But without Aaron Rodgers there, you're going to go ahead and grab him here because Nick Collins was a monster. And it's a guy they would have selected eventually anyway, so might as well just go ahead and give him to him here.
Exactly.
All right.
Makes sense to me.
25th overall pick, Washington Redskins. You are on the clock.
Again.
Is
In fact, I picked for him. I picked for him earlier.
Oh, okay. That's right, you did at 9.
Yep, I picked Richie Incognito for him, if I remember right.
That's going to happen to me again too. Down at pick 28. I'll get the Chargers again.
Yep. So we've already kind of gone over what their needs are, but just to clarify what I'm looking at, I already shored up their O-line, and their defense is good at this point, and their offense is decent. They had okay wide receivers because remember they had Santana Moss, but then it kind of falls off after that. Sure, they have David Patton, and then they had a couple other okay wide receivers still in the room, like Jimmy Ferris, Antonio Brown, a different Antonio Brown, but an okay one. Like they had okay wide receivers, but they definitely could upgrade if they needed to. They have a good tight end. Trying to remember what I want to put here. They have. I'm trying to figure out, do I want to do something on the defense? Even though their defense is good, is there anything I can upgrade here? Like a straight upgrade? So
I will say their original pick was Jason Campbell, the quarterback out of Auburn.
Yeah. Which, depending on who you are, I would say that's okay, but not fantastic. They didn't. To be honest, I don't think picking a QB here makes sense to me. No QBs that are left on the board, in my opinion, are first round picks. They're not. In my opinion, maybe late first round picks, very very late. But
and you might actually see that.
Yeah. But I'm not picking Campbell here. I'm debating, do I go wide receiver or do I pick somebody on the defense? Because right now their left defensive end at this point was Ronaldo Wynn, which he's getting older. He's 31. I don't think he was that good, in my opinion. He was okay, but not great. The right defensive end, though, was Philip Daniels, and I think, if I remember right, he was pretty decent. So maybe getting a new edge on the left side, but let's see who they already had as other potentials on their list already. Demetric Evans and that's pretty much it, really. Wow. Okay, so I could go DE. I could go for a defensive end to help pair up a little bit better with Phil Daniels. Their linebacker core, we have Marcus Washington, which was good. Lamar Marshall, which was okay. LeVar Arrington. That one doesn't sound familiar.
He was really good.
Was he really good?
Yeah. For a short span.
Okay, yeah.
And then he wound up leaving for New York, and I think he injured himself in a motorcycle accident and really had a fall off after that.
Damn.
But for a little while there, that dude was a monster.
Gotcha. Okay. Their corners at the time were Walt Harris and Sean Springs. Both in their 30s, so I don't know if they were any good because they're not. Their name Harris sounds familiar. Sean Springs doesn't.
Sean Springs is familiar to me.
Okay. I don't know if I really want to do much with that, so I'm thinking either a wide receiver, probably an edge.
Yeah, the dude only played 6 years. Arrington, 323 tackles and 23 and a half sacks in just 6 years.
Okay. Fair enough.
He was on his way to a Hall of Fame career before the accident.
I think I'm going to do something a little interesting here. There's a. I think I'm going to go wide receiver here because I do need one. And there's a couple that are on my list as potentials, but funnily enough, there isn't like. I would say this year didn't have amazing wide receivers. Like there was a couple that were really good, and then the rest were just like meh. There wasn't it isn't like last year where you had like a bunch of really good ones and even a bunch that were still in the second that were really good, and even in the third, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this year was definitely a downturn when it comes to wide receivers, but there was one that I think is really good that ended up going undrafted. In fact. And he played out of, according to this, College Tiffin, Nate Washington.
Yep, he was on my list.
And I honestly, like, I could have gone for one of the other wide receivers here. Like, honestly, I could have probably gone Braylon Edwards here or something like that. But, like, I think Nate Washington is just better than all of the other available wide receivers at this point. Like, no questions. I mean, he's been to a couple Pro Bowls and Super Bowls. Like, the guy's good. He's got hands.
Yeah, obviously.
So, I prefer his play style over the rest. So, and I think he would fit in pretty well.
All right. So, 26 overall, the Seattle Seahawks are on the clock. So let's take a look, because originally they drafted Chris Spencer, a center from Ole Miss. But is that what they really needed, and is it what they should have taken? He wasn't that great, and I don't think so.
I was going to say. I think this is one of those few times where, like, nope, this isn't even really much of a question. They really should not have picked him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So let's take a look at what they have and where we're going to go from here. Okay. Quarterbacks. Matt Hasselbeck and Seneca Wallace.
Hasselbeck wasn't bad, if I remember right.
Actually, he was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah. So I think you're okay there.
Yeah. Running backs. Sean Alexander. All right, we're good there. Also a Pro Bowler.
Yep.
Wide receivers. Bobby Ingram, DJ Hackett, Darrell Jackson, Joe Juravicius, and Peter Warwick. I think you could upgrade that potentially.
You could upgrade that.
Yeah. You could upgrade that. Tight ends. Ryan Hanneman. Hanema? Hanam?
Sounds right.
Itula Millie. And Jeremy Stevens. Ooh, okay. Could upgrade that if I think there's something worth that.
Yep.
Their actual offense wasn't bad. Offensive line. Steve Hutchinson, Floyd Womack, Robbie Toback. Yeah, I think they're fine on the offensive line. I don't really think you should have drafted a center there. Defensive ends, defensive line. Rodney Bailey. Who else do we have here? Joe Tafoya, Marcus Tubbs. There's a few things here. You might want to upgrade something in here, but it's not necessary. What about linebackers? Kevin Bentley, Isaiah Kaczynski, Nico Kudovitis, and D.D. Lewis. Ouch. Ouch. Also, they did have Jamie Sharper, but he would be injured.
Right.
Defensive backs, Jordan Babineau, Michael Bulware, Andre Dyson, Kelly Herndon, Marquand Manuel, Marcus Trufant. Nah, I think you are probably pretty good in your secondary. Don't really think you need to screw around too much up in there. So, in reality, you're probably looking at either a wide receiver to help your wide receiver room, maybe a tight end, or a linebacker. Any linebacker. Every linebacker. You need a new linebacking core. Period. So, while I could go Braylon Edwards here, and that is certainly an option. That is not where I'm going.
That's fair.
Instead, I am going to gift them a linebacker that they would take later on anyway. Well, no, they wouldn't. I believe he was an undrafted free agent.
Oh, okay.
No, I am incorrect. He was a second-round pick. I'm a
Whoopsies. Whoopsie daisy.
Whoopsie daisy. I will take the middle linebacker from the University of Southern California, Lofa Tatupu,
Ah, okay.
which is somebody they would select in the second round anyway. I'm just moving him up because it makes more sense to grab him here.
I had him on my list, but he was actually further up from a different team that might have taken him. I actually didn't have him on any of my other teams, surprisingly enough.
I think he was a fantastic guy. He played really hard in the middle and made nightmares out of people.
Oh, yeah. He was still good. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, definitely. Alrighty. So, pick 27. The Atlanta Falcons are on the clock. Originally having selected from UAB, Roddy White, who is no longer available.
Not available. Very good pick, though. So the question is, do they need wide receiver? Do I need to select wide receiver? Well, let's take a look at what they had. So their points for was 14th of 32, and their points against is 18th of 32. So technically, maybe working more defense, but let's see what they had. QB, Michael Vick. Moving on. Don't even need to touch that. Running back, Warwick Dunn. Moving on. All right, fair enough.
I believe he is coming to the end of his career here, but yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yeah, I mean, he is 30, but he still plays at Atlanta until 2007, and then even plays at Tampa in 2008. So
back to Tampa for a year.
Yeah. So I think we're good there. Wide receivers, obviously they did not get Roddy White, so they had Michael Jenkins, which not bad. And let's see who else they had in their room that wasn't a rookie, so that's a rookie. Brian Finran, not a name I'm familiar with. Jerome Pathan, I think is how you say his name. Des White, which I feel like I heard he was actually not bad, unless this is not the same person I think it is. No, he did okay. He actually had a couple of years that were okay.
He had a few good years.
And that's pretty much it. So, yeah, they could definitely use with a solid another wide receiver. Tight end, they had LJ Crumpler. Not bad. And then even their O-line doesn't look like it's something I think is necessarily needs to be addressed. I mean, they have Kevin Schaefer, Matt Lear, Todd McClure, Kenan Forney, Ted Weiner. So I think their O-line was okay at this point, especially when you have Michael Vick as your QB. It's not really something you have to worry about too hard. So then let's look at their defense. What did they have for defense? So they had left defensive end as Patrick Kearney, which was not bad at all. Their right defensive end was a rookie, so I don't know. They ended up picking Bababino. That's who they ended up picking in this draft. But I don't know who they actually had as their right defensive end before this point. Chance Davis is a rookie as well. I don't know who they had as their previous defensive end. Never mind. Moving on. So potential need for a defensive end. Linebackers, a rookie. And then they had a middle linebacker of Keith Brooking, which ends up being a Pro Bowler. Not bad. They're a little... wow. Right linebacker, Demario Williams. Not bad. Left cornerback was D'Angelo Hall, which definitely good. Right cornerback was Jason Webster. Okay. So I could look at linebacker because they did pick up a rookie for their left linebacker, and looking at what they had as other linebackers, let's see here. Antoine Cash. John Leake was a rookie, so Ike Reese, kind of old at this point though. Artie Ulmer also getting older. Yeah. So I'm thinking wide receiver. Huh?
DeMario Williams.
DeMario Williams. Yep, I pointed him out earlier.
Yep.
So I could pair him up with another linebacker because they do need another one because they have their middle linebacker and their right back linebacker, but their left could be better. So I could work on that, but I don't think it's super needed. I could pair up Patrick Kearney with another defensive end. I think that might be a good option, looking at what they also had available to them, or a wide receiver. So really, the two I'm looking at are wide receiver and defensive end. But knowing what they have already on offense, I don't necessarily think we need to jump to wide receiver right now. I think shoring up the defense makes a little bit more sense at this point. So the question is, who do I go with? And I think I'm going to go DE, so I'm not going to go with linebacker here. So I need to decide, do I like this one or the other one? You would be good. You'd be really good as well, but I think I'm going to pick... Yeah. This just makes sense. I'm going to pick the defensive end out of Notre Dame, Justin Tuck.
Yep. I figured that's where you were going with it. Can't even be mad about that one. He was a fantastic player.
He really was.
Yeah. I considered him instead of Trent Cole earlier.
Yep,
that was the one I was considering for the Cowboys, and I was like,
yeah,
Trent Cole.
I figured.
But he was on my list.
Yep.
Alrighty.
I'm honestly surprised he was still here, to be honest, because I'm like,
yeah, he was
really good. But the problem is there wasn't a lot of teams that I had that were drafted that needed defensive ends really bad. So.
Alrighty. So back on the clock, San Diego Chargers at 28. We've already kind of gone over what they needed. I've already shored up defensively for them, kind of what they needed. The problem is, I still don't like anything wide receiver side. So what I'm going to do instead is there are still plenty of people available here that they do need. And offensive tackle is something I pointed out that they could definitively use. And it's something that is definitely on my list of like, okay, guys, you need to start protecting your quarterbacks. So I'm going to take a guy that was actually grabbed a little higher up. Let me see if I can figure out where he was grabbed at. Or was he grabbed further down? I know he's here somewhere. I just got to find him now. Yeah, I'll find him eventually. Hold on. I'm going to do it this way. There we go. So, I will go ahead and take a look at this individual. And I'm going to grab the 6'6", 320-pound tackle out of Washington, Khalif Barnes.
Yeah.
I'm going to use him to anchor that offensive line for, not Breeze. No.
Oh, Oh, I can literally picture
Rivers.
his silly face. Yeah, Philip
Rivers.
Rivers.
I'm
It's
going
like
to
I
use
can
that.
literally stare at his face.
I'm gonna use that to anchor the line for Philip Rivers for years to come. I
Yep.
don't think that's a bad grab at all. I think that's
No.
really going to help them out. I've addressed the defensive secondary. They still need help on the defensive line a little bit. They did draft a defensive tackle here, but you know what? I think offensive tackle is a more pressing need, and keeping Philip Rivers upright, I think, is more important than anything else. So that's where I'm going to go with this one. I like it, and let's say that one is call that done. That is overall the 28th pick. So
Yep. 28.
pick 29, Indianapolis. You were on the clock, originally picking Marlon Jackson, the cornerback out of Michigan. Is it really what they need, though?
Well, here's the interesting thing: is I do actually think they needed a corner. Is that the correct corner? That depends on who you ask. I don't think it was a bad corner. I don't think he was a great corner. So let's take a look at what they have, because this is ridiculous. It's the Colts. I mean, they were second in points for and second for points against. I wonder why. It can't be because they have Peyton Manning as their freaking QB.
Did they still have Edgerrin James as their running back? And
Yep, they have Edgerrin James, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne,
and Reggie
Dallas
Wayne.
Clark, Brian Fletcher, Tariq Glenn, Jeff Saturday still is their center. Like, their offense didn't need anything.
Offense needs Jack.
Even their defense is still good. I mean, we have Raheem Brook, we have Monte Rager, Dwight Freeney, Bob Sanders, Cato June. Like, the only thing that they actually looked that they kind of needed was corner, because their two corners right now is Nick Harper and Jason David. They're not bad corners. They're not fantastic corners. I don't think anything I'm going to pick is going to be necessarily a quote-unquote straight upgrade. But I think that they would be, like, given the fact that, like, Nick Harper is 31 at this point, I think you can look at possibly moving on from Nick Harper, right? And looking at what other defensive backs they had, I didn't personally like a lot of these guys. Like, we have, who else did they have still on their list as defensive backs here? He's a rookie. That was a rookie. Von Hutchins. Joe Jefferson, Dexter Reed, Jerome Sapp, Donald Strickland. Like, they're not bad. I just feel like you could add more potential starters in that group, right? And there's one that particularly comes to mind here that I think makes more sense than who they ended up picking. Because, like I said, they picked Marlon Jackson. I'm not a fan of that pick. I think there was somebody who got picked in the next round who's even better. Kid out of LSU, Corey Webster.
I wasn't sure if you were going to go with him or the undrafted guy, but Corey Webster makes a lot of sense here. I'm not going to be mad about that.
Yeah, I thought about the undrafted one. I'm not going to lie. I did.
All right. Moving right along. Next pick on the list belongs to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
What a bunch of Steelers.
The Steelers. Originally picking Heath Miller, tight end out of Virginia. Guess what? Not available anymore. Shit. All right. So then going over the Steelers, who did they have at this point in time? That becomes your question. Quarterbacks, Ben Roethlisberger, moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Running backs, Jerome Bettis, Deuce Staley, and Willie Parker. Okay, moving on. Wide receivers, Antoine Randall L., Hines Ward. Okay, Hines Ward is starting to come to the end of his career, though. We know that. Randall L. is decent. Actually, he's not. Hines Ward would play until 2011. So at this point, he's in the middle of his career. But Antoine Randall L. wasn't horrible, but he wouldn't be with the Steelers after this season. He would move on to the Redskins.
Gotcha.
And he wasn't the greatest thing ever. He was more of a kick returner.
Gotcha.
Tight ends, Jermaine Tumen. Okay. In reality, they didn't need much else because they were pretty stacked just about everywhere else that they needed to be. This was a very, very, very good team. I'm not going to go over everything, but let's just say they had Joey Porter and James Harrison and James Ferrier and Larry Foote on their linebacking squad. They had Casey Hampton and Brett Kiesel. Brett Kiesel's beard had its own Twitter account. Yeah. So, in reality, there wasn't much they really needed outside of potentially a wide receiver and a tight end. Okay. Or whatever else they could get their hands on. And that really is, because at this point in time, you've got Ike Taylor and Deshae Townsend as your cornerbacks with Willie Williams playing your nickel. You've got Troy Polamalu as your starting safety. I mean,
the most glorious hair in the world.
Now, you could get somebody to pair up with Polamalu.
Good.
Who was your starting strong safety. There's a couple of other free safeties still floating around that would work as well. Yeah. So, the question is, do I want to grab a wide receiver and hope they turn out better in Pittsburgh? Or, and you know what? Or do I want to grab one of the safeties? And you know what? I think I am going to grab that wide receiver. I am going to draft. And he was originally drafted much, much higher than this. He was originally drafted 3rd overall out of Michigan. I will take the wide receiver, Braylon Edwards. And you know what? You can't... That's not a horrible pick for Pittsburgh.
Especially at this point, yeah.
At this point, because you still have... not Tomlin. Who was the guy before Tomlin?
Oh, gosh. I forget who was the coach before Tomlin.
But we all know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
And
I can picture him. I just forget his name.
I forget his name too, but I picture him. And he was absolutely... an amazing coach. And if anybody could get the most out of somebody like Braylon Edwards, now you're going to put him next to Hines Ward.
Bill Cowher.
Bill Cowher, thank you. Bill Cowher, and then you've got the bus in there, and you've got a big, strong quarterback like Roethlisberger to fling the ball to him. If somebody's going to get the most out of a dude like Braylon Edwards, it's going to be the Pittsburgh fucking Steelers.
They're definitely one of the best outside of, like, New England, yeah.
Yeah, much. Yeah. So, honestly, that makes the most sense to put there. I like it. It's probably one of my favorite picks. All right. So, after I pick there, we're going to move on to pick number 31. Philadelphia Eagles. You were on the clock. Originally picking defensive tackle Mike Patterson from the University of Southern California.
And he wasn't bad.
No, but was it the best option here?
Well, so here's the funny thing about the Eagles is all of the people that I had originally
they're already gone.
Going here. They're already gone. All of them gone. Which I figured was going to happen because we're at the last 2 picks here. So let's see what we have for the Eagles. The Eagles had points for 18th of 32, so they could have some improvements there. Points against 27th of 32. All right, so they have some defensive issues. Let's take a look at their team, though. So you have QB Donovan McNabb, which I don't know how to put him. I was never a big fan of McNabb, but he's not a bad QB. I guess that's the way I'm going to put it. He's not a bad QB. He's not a great QB. He's an okay QB, but there's certainly not better picks here, to be blunt. So what else do we have? We have running back Brian Westbrook, which I think at this point he was still pretty good, right? Then we had wide receivers Reggie Brown and Greg Lewis. Very serviceable wide receivers in my book. Tight end was L.J. Smith. Okay. Then we got offensive line. We got Tra Thomas, Artis Hicks, Hank Fraley. I think it's Fraley. Sean Andrews, John Runan. I got a fly in my face. Go away, fly! So, You could argue that go wide receiver, especially because of the fact I mentioned Reggie Brown being being on the list, but he was actually a rookie. They ended up picking up, so maybe wide receiver. But what do they have for wide receiver right now? They had. Already mentioned Greg Lewis, Darnarine McCants. Don't know that one. Billy McMullen. Oh, they had Terrell Owens. Did he get injured or something? Or did he just not play much at this point?
No, he played. In fact, there was a big thing where right after this, T.O. called, after the Super Bowl loss, T.O. called out McNabb and said that McNabb blew it. And then he'd get traded away to Dallas,
Fair enough.
where he'd go be a cancer for a while.
True. Because at this point, he was kind of being kind of a cancer, to be fair.
He was good for several years.
He was still a good player, though, yeah.
Yeah, he was good for several years in Dallas. And then, like, he was great, and then he started beefing with fucking Romo,
yeah. Which, that was stupid. Anyways, so I can understand why they might decide to pick up a wide receiver here. Problem is that there isn't too many wide receivers I love that are left on the board, so let's look at their defense. Yeah, there's only one that I could even do, and I don't even think I'd want to pick him here. I could honestly see a running back. Like, I want to see who do they have behind Westbrook. Who did they have behind Westbrook here? Lamar Gordon, Reno Ma, Ryan Moats. Honestly, I could pick up another running back to work with Westbrook. I could see that, actually. Let's look at their defense, though. So their defensive ends, we have Javon Curse, which looked like he played pretty well. And their right defensive end was ND. They have it labeled as ND. I assume his name is just really long. Kalu? I don't know how good he was. He doesn't look like he was bad. Let me check his stats real quick. Yeah, he looked like he was serviceable. So I could go defensive end, but I don't know if I will. The tackles were Hollis Thomas and Darwin Walker. Yeah, let's look at their linebackers. We have Dahani Jones? Donnie Jones? Okay. And Jeremy Trotter. Obviously, Trotter was the better. And then Keith Adams as well. So, maybe linebacker. Corners, we had Lito Shepard and Sheldon Brown. Not bad. And their safeties, they had Michael Lewis and Brian Dawkins. Ooh, they had Dawkins. I forgot about that. Which isn't bad. So I'm thinking the three positions that make sense. I could go running back. There's a couple of those that are still available that are actually really good. In my book, anyways. I could go linebacker, but I don't know if they necessarily need one. It's the same thing with defensive end. Like, it's kind of like... It's one of those situations, right? Because they're obviously picking so low. It's like, obviously their team is pretty decent. But it's like, what do I select here? So, I think... I think there's enough running backs on this list that I really like that I think deserve to be first-round picks, to be honest with you. So I think I am going to pick a running back. Question is, which one do I want to pick that's left on the board? I really like this one a lot. I think this one will actually help with their wide receiving. You know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick a dual threat running back that I think would make perfect sense here. Out of Kansas State, Darren Sproles.
I was wondering if you were going to grab him.
Yeah.
He was on my list as well. Sadly, he was so tiny that nobody ever really gave him a good shot at running back, but that dude was quicker than a hiccup.
Oh yeah, and he was, and I'm thinking if they use him properly, like he's easily a dual threat. You can run him through the run back, or you can send him out to the side to pick up as options easy, and he was good at that. So,
Yep.
I think that makes perfect sense for what they need. They don't necessarily need a solid second running back, but having the option to use a running back as a wide receiver, I think makes a lot of sense for this
Yep.
team.
All right. So finally, the final pick overall. We're going to do it. We're going for it. It is the New England Patriots, and they are on the clock.
Who is the Patriots going to pick? 'Cause
Okay. So the Patriots just
I'm
got
curious to
done
see what
winning
you're
a
gonna do
Super
here.
Bowl. There isn't a lot that they need. I mean, if you really looked at their roster at this point in time, they were. The word
Pretty
is
stacked.
stacked. You have Tom Brady as your quarterback, backed up by Doug Flutie.
Who cares?
You have running backs Corey Dillon, moving along.
Yep.
Wide receivers Deion Branch and Troy Brown. Okay, and Tim Dwight. And Bethel Johnson. Tight ends Christian Fourier and Benjamin Watson. Now, if there's one place where I looked at it and I went, they could use some help there, it would be here. Because you do have Stephen Neal and Russ Huckstein as potential guards. Dan Coppin's got the center all lined out. Matt Light, Tom Ashworth, Brandon Gorin, there's your tackles. They did take Logan Mankins as a guard originally. And that is, the guard is not a bad pick. He's no longer available, but guard is not a bad pick.
God's not a bad pick. Yep.
You had Richard Seymour and Dan Klecko and Vince Wilfork on the line. Hard to get better than that. You had, let's see here, who would have been their starters? You had Mike Vrabel, Willie McGinnis, and who cares, as the linebacking core. You had Rodney Harrison, Tyrone Poole, Asante Samuel, and Eugene Wilson as the D-back core. So yeah, I think overall. Oh, you also had Teddy Bruschi, who was the initial inside linebacker.
Oh, gotcha.
He would be put on the PUP list, though. I think he suffered a stroke that year.
Oh God. Poor guy.
I still think he'd come back and play another year or two.
Probably.
And yes, by the way, Mike Vrabel is that Mike Vrabel.
That Mike Vrabel. Yep.
Yep, the one that is now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
Okay. So all of that being said, the one piece that I looked at besides best player available that they could probably use is to protect Tom Brady and go with an offensive guard. Now, the one they originally picked is gone, but there's still one there that I think is a fantastic guard, and they're going to take him here. So, from the University of Alabama, the New England Patriots will select Evan Mathis.
Yep.
And that brings an end to the first round. I think we did pretty good.
Yeah.
And you know, like I was seriously thinking. So I'll tell you the guy that I was talking about. That's the undrafted corner, and I almost gave him here to New England because I thought, Bill would totally take that.
But they didn't really
Brandon
need another one.
Browner.
Yeah, Brandon Browner.
Yeah,
I
totally
had
didn't
him on
need
my
it.
list too.
I also almost thought about giving them Sean Merriman. Just like, you didn't need him, but what would Bill Belichick have done with him?
If there was honestly, there's one other wide receiver that I kind of thought would be okay selected here. I also thought he was undrafted originally.
If you're thinking of who I think you're thinking of, I almost gave him to Bill, which is Josh Cribbs.
Oh, no, I was thinking Lance Moore. Josh Cribbs is good too, though. Josh Cribbs was the other one. Lance Moore, though, was the other solid wide receiver that I thought. Josh Cribbs, I like because he was known for more of his special teams, and Bill loves that.
And that's why I was thinking Josh Cribbs. Yeah. Bill might have taken him there, knowing what Cribbs would become, but definitely taking Tom Brady and using him as a guard, or not Tom Brady, taking a guard to protect Tom Brady.
Take Tom Brady, make him a guard.
Using Tom Brady, using a guard to protect Tom Brady better. I think that's important because I think they had a retirement or something after the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Now, there was one defensive end that I really, really wanted to pick at some point and pull him out of the 7th fucking round because there's no reason he should be a fucking 7th round pick. But I couldn't find a place to put him on my teams, and that was Jay Ratliff.
Okay.
He did.
He's not on my list because my other defensive ends were Chris Canty,
Oh, okay. Yep.
Marcus Spears,
Yep.
and Matt Roth.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, Jay Ratliff played.
Oh no, Jay Ratliff. I have him as a defensive tackle.
Oh, I have him as a defensive end.
See, I have him as a tackle.
I think. Let me.
I
check
think he
his-
bounced
I'm actually
between
curious.
both.
Did he bounce both? Yeah, DE, nose tackle, DE, left defensive tackle.
Yep.
Yeah, so he moved around a lot.
Yep, I have him
So-
right here. I also
Yeah.
have Jonathan Babineau and Mike Patterson on my D line.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like, I really wanted to pick Ratliff out because Ratliff had 35 sacks
Yes.
in his career, and his 7th round pick. That's
Other guys-
insulting.
Other guys that I had that did not. So I'm going to go through the list of people that I had so that we can just talk
Okay,
about. Because I think this will be interesting now. You know, we've
I imagine
gone
some
pretty
of them are
long,
gonna be a lot
but
of picks
this
that
will
I
be
thought,
fun. So on my quarterbacks list, I also had Kyle Orton,
Yep.
Jason Campbell, who actually had a couple of good seasons,
He had a couple good seasons, yeah.
and Derek Anderson.
Yep. And I had them on my list as, like, QBs that I could select, but not all three of those, I'm honestly, like, I just couldn't find a way to really push them into the first round.
Other running backs that I had, Brandon Jacobs.
Brandon Jacobs, yep.
And then, of course, the original big three, Cedric Benson, Ronnie Brown, and Cadillac Williams.
Exactly. Yeah.
They were all on the list. I didn't have any other wide receivers. We did have Bo Scaife as a tight end that was potential.
Yep.
I also had Jamal Brown and Alex Barron as potential offensive tackles.
I had Jamal Brown, but I did not have the other one on there.
Barron. I also had
Yeah, I did not
Chris
have Barron.
Myers and Joe Berger as offensive guards.
I actually didn't have many guards. I didn't have enough time to go through as many guards as I wanted, so I didn't have too many on my list.
And I already mentioned the DTs and DEs. OLB, Sean Merriman. Also, inside linebacker, Barrett Rudd.
Yep.
We also had, we mentioned Brandon Browner, but I also had Fabian Washington on there because he wasn't horrible. Fringe first rounder at best.
I also had OJ Otawage
Yep.
on my list.
And then safeties, I had Brodney Poole was another one that was on there, and Gerald Sensabaugh.
I didn't have him on mine.
Yep, and Atari Bigby too wasn't bad.
A big B. Yep.
Yep. So those were all guys that I had. You probably had way more than I did, but
we already talked about Brandon Jacobs. I'm just looking through the list to see if there's any that hasn't crossed over or ones that I didn't think of. We already talked about Kerry Rhodes.
Terry Rhodes, you drafted.
Yeah, I drafted him. I don't think there was too many others on my list that we haven't either talked about or wasn't drafted, to be honest with you. Because a lot of the ones, honestly, you drafted a lot of players that I had on my list. Like I'm actually a little surprised at how close we were in thinking on what players should go where.
Yeah, I really did comb through this. I
Yeah,
almost, and when you told me you had a whole bunch, I was like, oh crap. So I actually sat down and I almost went player by player and clicked on them just to check their stats to see if they were any good.
Yep, I did that with a couple. Okay, yeah, I'm hitting the bottom. So no, I think we've talked about pretty much everybody that I had on my list.
Well,
so yeah, it was very interesting. I thought this was going to go off the rails a lot more than it did, but surprisingly, it stayed more focused than I was expecting to be honest. I thought one of us was going to start pulling out some weird picks. Outside of my one meme pick, I think everything kind of made sense.
Yeah, no, I think we made everything make sense, and really looking at it all, I was like, oh, okay. All right. Yeah, no, that works. Yeah. So,
Yep.
you know, there were more than enough players to go around to fill needs
Oh, yeah.
and fill holes and everything else. And I think honestly that, like, Sean Merriman, if his career had been longer, definitely would have gone somewhere in the first round. The problem is his career just torpedoed so quickly.
Exactly.
He was, like, if you look at his stats, this is what we mean. Like,
They're amazing stats, yeah.
I am not a Sean Merriman hater. I want everybody to know that. Like, I was a big fan of the way that he played for a while.
Yeah.
But if you look at, he was called himself Lights Out. The dude had 257 tackles and 45 sacks.
Yeah.
Okay?
He was one of the people I was debating on putting with the Eagles at that linebacker if I didn't.
But he only played for 7 years, and he never made a Pro Bowl after 2007. So, you look at it, all of his stuff more or less came in his first
What,
3
3
years.
years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because his first 3 years, 10 sacks, 17 sacks, and 12 sacks.
Yeah.
After that, his best year was 2009, where he had 4 sacks.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
he never really lived up to his potential again. He was kind of done after that.
He had his 3 years, and that was it.
Yeah. He was charged in 2009 with battery for Tila Tequila.
Forgot about that, yeah.
Yeah, that was a big deal. But the point is, I think if his career had lasted longer, I think he'd have gone somewhere in the first round.
Probably.
And I can't help but wonder if we'd have put him on a different team if he'd have never had the legal issues, and maybe his career would have gone longer. But
yeah,
because I thought about giving him to Bill, because if there was somebody that was going to make him into the superstar he should have been, it would be Bill Belichick.
You would certainly hope so. Of course, there are recent news about the one guy trying to take a gun on a plane. Bill Belichick, get your guys in order.
Yeah. One of these days, by the way, I would like to redraft the 2000 NFL draft. There were only 31 teams at that point, but it's a notable draft because one of the premier Super Bowl winning quarterbacks was taken in that draft, and there's no way that he slips to the 7th round this time.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Considering
the problem is, the only problem that I have is it's one of those interesting situations where you look at it and you go, would he have been the same player drafted by a different team right away?
I had that question. Well, he wasn't even that player right away with New England.
No, exactly. But would he even been able to develop?
My thing was, I looked at it, and looking at how Belichick hasn't developed Mac, and looking at everything else that has happened, did Tom Brady make Bill Belichick, or did Bill Belichick make Tom Brady?
And I think we've discussed this before, where it's probably somewhere in the middle where they both helped each other to some degree.
But I still think
the
Tom
question
Brady
is just
would
how
be,
much.
I think Tom would still be really good even without Bill.
In the right situations with the right teams, like it's one of those things. Remember, I don't think he started right away, right? I think he started.
No, he sat behind.
He sat behind Bledsoe
for 1 season behind Bledsoe, and then Bledsoe got his knee ripped
injured.
up.
Yep.
And Tom Brady came in and blew the doors off.
Yep. So then you have to question, like, would he have been a good if he was sitting behind somebody else? Don't know. It's an interesting prospect because, like, also if you think about it, like if whatever team drafted him started him right away, would he have been any good at all? Would he have been rattled right away? Like, that's a question, right?
There is that question.
And that by itself could drastically change the trajectory of any QB.
Yep.
So,
at any rate,
interesting thought though. It'd be fun to do.
Yeah, at some point in time. But I think the next one we're probably going to do will be at the end of the season before the next draft. We will probably do a redraft of the decade draft for this upcoming season. I believe we did 12 last year, so I think we're going to do 13. Will probably be the next one we do, which that one has some... That one was not great.
No.
I will leave it at that.
That one's going to be interesting. I thought this one was going to be interesting. That one's probably going to be more interesting.
That one is going to be way more interesting, all things considered. So, looking at that one, I'm like, ooh, that's going to be, whoa, wow. Because they're really, that was a,
interesting year.
Yeah, if I remember right, there really weren't any good quarterbacks to take, and
I don't think so.
I think that was the draft with all the offensive linemen at the top of the board.
It wouldn't surprise me. Let me double check just to make sure. Yeah, the top two picks were tackles. Then you had DE, tackle, DE, linebacker, guard.
Yeah.
The first QB off the board was EJ Manuel.
Yeah, that was the EJ Manuel draft.
Yep.
Oh, this was such a bad draft.
Yeah. It's gonna
All
be...
of the really good players were taken
Oh,
later
look, Geno
on.
Smith, though.
Yeah, but he wasn't good until last year.
How do we know? He was drafted by the frickin' Jets.
That's true. Also, Le'Veon Bell,
Mike Glennon, jeez.
Jamie Collins, Eddie Lacy, Travis Kelce.
Matt Barkley.
Yeah.
Oh, David Bakhtiari was here, though.
There were some good picks.
Ryan Nassib. I remember that guy.
There were some really good picks here, but there were also a whole
There's a lot of
bunch
wild, just...
of crap.
Yeah.
Latavius Murray in the 6th.
Yep. I just saw that, yep. Rex Burkhead.
Jordan Poyer.
Oh, man.
Anybody
Oh, yeah,
undrafted
Jordan
that I
Poyer.
liked? Tony Jefferson.
It's just gonna be... It's just... There's basically no QBs here. Like, this is not... If you want QBs, the 2013 draft was not it outside
This
of,
is
like...
also the Adam Thielen draft.
Yep. DeAndre Hopkins, Xavier Rhodes. Yep. There... Basically, anything that... This is basically one of those drafts where it's not
Everything
QB heavy.
but QBs.
It's not QBs. Even wide receivers was like after the first couple started to fall off a bit.
But basically all the skill positions were
Actually-
very much.
Running backs, I don't think there was. Hold on, was there many running backs in this one?
There were a
I don't think
couple.
None in the first round. Not a single one in the
Yeah,
first.
but I mean ones that should have gone in the first
Yeah.
round. There were
Well, that's
a
what I'm
few.
looking. Like, Le'Veon Bell, yeah,
Le'Veon Bell, Eddie Lacy.
Eddie Lacy. So there was a couple. Who else do we have here? Running backs. There was only a couple here that I can see. So
Yeah.
it was definitely more focused on the linemen,
And defense.
big defense, and a couple big wide receivers, and then a bunch of really good mid-talent wide receivers.
Yeah. But we're probably going to redraft that at the end of the NFL season. It takes us a little while to do all the research for this. That's why we don't do them often. We save them for special times. But yeah, we're going to definitely research and take a look at that and then do it at the end of the NFL season before the draft because there's that lull in there, and that's going to be one of the things that we do. Is we like
we'll
to take
also have to do our own draft too for the draft class. Okay.
Yeah, we gotta do
Next year's
that.
gonna be fun.
Yeah, our mock draft.
Yep.
Oh,
Fun
yeah,
times.
yeah, that'll be fun. And I don't even know because we haven't even started the college season. There's a couple of guys, quarterback-wise.
There's a
that I'm
couple of
keeping my eye on.
quarterbacks, but I think there's even a couple wide receivers. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of questions still on a lot of players.
Yep, and we'll have to see how they all play out. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so we hope that you have a great day. We hope that you enjoyed this special episode of us redrafting the 2005 first round from the NFL draft. If you disagree with us, leave us a comment. If you agree with our picks, leave us a comment. If you think we fucked something up majorly, leave us a comment. Give us a thumbs up, give us a like, share us with your friends. We love to get around and be out there. We hope that all of you have a great day, and we will see you next week when we are back with the regular podcast and the sports news. Peace.